Chapter 420. Fiancé. The next day, in the hall on the first floor of Fairy Tale, all the magic shooters of Fairy Tale were stunned when they saw Mira and Lisanna hugging Noah's arm tightly. Noah was surrounded in the middle with a blissful expression on his face. This was because Mira and Lisanna had ignored Noah's dissuasion and hugged Noah's arm tightly while informing the entire guild of this shocking news. This caused an uproar in the hall and then a sudden silence in the next moment. Fiancé. Naz, Gray, Hubby, and the others were all dumbfounded. Fiancé. 2. Lucy and Levi opened their mouths wide in shock and couldn't react at all. Mira and Lisanna. Elusha's eyes widened and her mouth formed an O shape. She pointed at Noah, Mira, and Lisanna with trembling hands. In other words, you're going to get married? No, we don't plan to get married so soon, Noah quickly said. He couldn't help it as the atmosphere was too awkward for him. It's just that we plan to get engaged first and get married later. Get married, get married. Elusha muttered absent-mindedly. After a while, she seemed to have thought of something and smoke suddenly appeared in her head. Even her fingers were fidgeting. That, I'm not mentally prepared yet. No, they're going to get married, not you. All of the magic shooters in Fairy Tale complained in unison. At this time, the one who felt the most incredulous was Makarov. At this time, the wine glass in Makarov's hand fell to the ground. He staggered in front of Noah, Mira, and Lisanna and asked with an extremely ugly expression that looked like he was crying and laughing at the same time. Getting married? Noah? My grandson? Marrying Mira and Lisanna? Yes. The smile on Myra's beautiful face was still gentle, but it was much brighter than before. She even raised her hand with the diamond ring and showed it to everyone. Yesterday, Noah proposed to us, and the answer we gave was okay. Levi exclaimed in surprise. So that ring is for a marriage proposal? Grandpa. Noah's gaze met Makarov's. The awkwardness in his heart had long disappeared, and only warmth filled his heart. I'm really going to get married and have a family. Have a family. Have a family. Makarov lowered his head and shoulders trembled. After a while, he suddenly burst into tears. Guild leader? All the magic shooters in the guild were shocked. Grandpa's face. My grandson is finally going to start a family. Makarov cried out in joy. Moreover, there are 2 of them. Hearing this, the sorcerers in Fairy Tale understood that Makarov's reaction was only because he was too excited and moved. Grandpa. Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That being said, we're just getting engaged first. As for when we'll get married, we'll discuss it later. Let's get engaged first. Let's get engaged first. Makarov was already speaking incoherently. When we get married in the future, we must hold the grandest wedding in the entire Fiori Kingdom. Only then can we show the prestige of the next president of Fairy Tale. Guild leader. This time, Lisanna was a little shy. You made your decision too quickly. Although she said so, Lisanna's face was full of longing. She was obviously looking forward to her wedding, or rather, she was looking forward to the moment when she became Noah's bride. Lisanna. Beside her, Myra's pretty face was also slightly red, but she still quietly tugged at Lisanna. You have to call me Grandpa in the future. Lisanna was even more shy. That's really too fast. It's okay. It doesn't matter when you call me Grandpa. Makarov laughed with tears in his eyes. In short, we're having a banquet today. To celebrate my grandson's engagement. Oh. Although Nazi, Gray, and the others were still very surprised, they still cheered enthusiastically and gave their blessings to their childhood best friend. Congratulations. Noah. Gray hugged Noah's neck and laughed. You rascal, I didn't expect you to get married so soon. You're really hateful. Although I don't quite understand. Nazi put his hands on his waist and laughed loudly. But still, congratulations, Noah. Hey, Nazi. Hubby was frightened by Elusha's appearance and flew in Nazi's direction. Elusha has become very strange. Get married, get married. Elusha's head was still smoking and she was in a crash. Damn it. As for the rest of the magic shooters from Fairy Tale, they let out tragic cries of grief. Oh, our Mila sauce. Hey, hey, hey. Is no one complaining? Lucy felt that her whole body was not good and could not help but remind them loudly. Noah is going to marry 2 people. 2 people. 2 people is good. 2 people is good. Makarov was so happy that he lost his sense of direction. But it was not strange. Although Noah was not Makarov's biological grandson, Makarov did not regard Noah as an adopted grandson at all. After all, Lax's was already like that, and Noah was quite capable. Whether it was strength, temperament, intelligence, or methods, there was nothing that was not outstanding. Makarov had always been proud of him. Now, such a grandson was going to get married? As a grandfather, how could Makarov not be happy? In addition, the other party was the extremely popular masked Lady Mira Jenny and her sister Lisanna, who was not inferior to her elder sister in the slightest. These 2 treasures of the guild, Makarov loved them dearly. If it wasn't for the fact that the other party was Noah, perhaps the first one to stand up and object would be Makarov. As for the male magic shooters in the guild, they were already lying on the ground with tears streaming down their faces. He's actually marrying 2 women? And sisters? Levi, who finally reacted from the shock, let out an extremely complicated sigh. This is the first time I've heard that someone other than a king and a noble would marry 2 people at the same time. Although there was no such thing as monogamy in this world, people tacitly agreed that there was only one person to marry, even if it was a wealthy businessman. Take Lucy for example. Lucy's father was a rich man, but he had only married Lucy's mother from the beginning to the end. So far, there had been no news of him marrying a second person. And generally, those who would marry more than one person were either the king of a country or some nobles whose status was only below the king. It was not impossible for ordinary people to marry 2 people, but it was really, really rare. But no matter what, the moment the rings were put on Mira and Lisanna's hands, this fact had already been decided. It also meant that Mira and Lisanna, the sisters, had truly begun to accept reality and serve a man together. Regarding this, the happiest people were Jet and Troy. Good. Jet shouted. That's great. Noah. Troy also exclaimed excitedly. We support you. This way, the chances of Levi joining the pirate ship would be infinitely reduced to 0. How could Jet and Troy not support him? Unfortunately, nothing was absolute in this world. What would happen in the future would only be known in the future. Ever since I was young, I've always felt that you're not a simple man. I didn't expect you to really do it. Kana, who had returned from her mission, giggled as she raised her glass. Well, anyway, let's drink. Grandpa, where's Elfman? Noah rubbed his nose, ignoring the mockery and complaints of the people around him as he asked Makarov. Elfman hasn't returned from his mission yet? When I received the report in the morning, he said that he was already on his way back. Makarov patted Noah's shoulder, his old face flushed red. When he comes back, you should tell him about this in person. Noah nodded heavily, apologizing in his heart. I'm sorry, Elfman, I'll take care of your elder and younger sister. Chapter 421. Pa. Not long after returning to Fairy Tale, Elfman, who had just put down his luggage, dropped the wine glass that he had just picked up onto the ground with a crisp sound. However, Elfman didn't notice it at all. He stared blankly at Noah, Mira, and Lisanna. His resolute face was filled with shock, bewilderment, and disbelief. Although the sorcerers in Fairy Tale behaved the same way at the beginning, Noah could not hide his awkwardness when he was faced with the same behavior again, especially when it was Elfman. That was only natural. No matter who it was, they would react the same way as Elfman when they heard that someone was going to marry more than one of their family members. It was because of this that Noah felt so awkward. If he was only marrying one, he wouldn't have to feel guilty. The problem was that Noah wasn't marrying one, but two, and they were marrying the older and younger sisters of Elfman. Fortunately, it was Noah who told Elfman that he was going to marry his older sister and younger sister. If it were anyone else, Elfman would probably be waving his fist. Compared to Noah, Mira and Lisanna were calm. They wore gentle and cute smiles respectively as they gazed at Elfman. They seemed to be enjoying Elfman's reaction. Phew. After some time, Elfman let out a heavy sigh. He picked up another wine glass and finished it in one gulp. Then, he looked at Noah sternly. "Noah, I've always thought that you're a man. Is that so?" Noah couldn't help but reveal a puzzled expression. "But why don't I feel happy about your praise at all? That's what a man is." Elfman used a theory that no one else could understand as he stared at Noah. "That's why, as a man, Noah, teasing another man is absolutely unforgivable." Upon hearing that, Mira and Lisanna couldn't help but giggle. Only Noah let out an understanding sigh. It was understandable that Elfman couldn't believe it, wasn't it? "Elfman," Mira said softly as if she was trying to console her younger brother. "You can't doubt the words of others. It's very rude." "Big brother Elfman, it's all true," Lisanna teased. "Big sister Mira and I are going to become Noah's brides. You can't object even if you want to. That's what a real man is." Elfman's tanned face was covered in sweat as he said this. That's right. A man has to be able to accept everything. A man has to be able to marry two wives. A man has to marry the same man. That's what a man is." Seeing that Elfman had fallen into a state of incoherence, Noah didn't even have the mood to complain about the strange things that Elfman said. "I know that this is too sudden, but Elfman, I'm not joking." Noah could only meet Elfman's gaze head on. "Although I haven't decided when, I will definitely take your sisters away from you forever. That's a fact." Saying that he would take Elfman's sisters away from him forever was more or less an exaggeration, but it wasn't entirely false. Although he had thought of all sorts of possibilities, Noah only wanted to use this to express his determination. That was because Noah knew how important each other's existence was to Mira, Elfman, and Lisanna. Ever since they were young, the three of them had relied on each other for survival. In the lives of these three siblings, their father and mother, who had long ceased to exist in their lives, were not even as important as each other. The three of them used to live in the same village, but because Mira had awakened the demon's magic, she was chased out of the village. Later on, in order to survive, they ran to all corners of the Fiori kingdom and even joined Fairy Tale. The three of them had never left each other's side. Therefore, to Elfman, his elder sister and younger sister were definitely the most important thing in his life, without exception. To Mira and Lisanna, Elfman's status as a family member was also the most important. He was even on par with the person they loved the most, which was Noah. Therefore, since Noah had decided to get engaged to Mira and Lisanna first and would definitely marry them in the future, he didn't want to face Elfman with a perfunctory attitude. Mira and Lisanna seemed to understand Noah's thoughts. They both shut their mouths and chose to watch from the side. They looked at Noah and Elfman with extremely gentle expressions, showing the most complete trust. The two men in front of them, one was their lover, and the other was their most important family member. Therefore, Mira and Lisanna believed that the two men wouldn't make a decision that would disappoint them. Elfman seemed to have seen Noah's seriousness from Noah's attitude. He finally snapped out of his messy state and scratched his head in frustration. "Although I've already seen that my sister and Lisanna's attitudes towards you are different, I didn't expect them to choose to marry you in the end." Elfman crossed his arms and looked at Noah with a sharp gaze that he would never use in the past. "As a man, Noah, I only want you to promise me that you will protect my sister and sister with your life. Can you do that?" Hearing this, Noah smiled. His smile was strangely arrogant. "Is this the first day you've known me?" Noah didn't give any promises, nor did he make any vows. Elfman smiled as well. That's a real man. Seeing this scene with their own eyes, Mira and Lisanna revealed gentle smiles. As expected, these two men wouldn't disappoint them. At this moment, Elfman suddenly changed the topic. Then, should I call you brother-in-law or brother-in-law in the future? This one sentence made Noah, Mira, and Lisanna choke at the same time. None of them had thought of this question before. No matter what, today was a happy day. Just like a festival, all the banquets in Fairy Tale were destined to last for the whole day. At this moment, whether it was those who sincerely gave their blessings or those who were envious, they seemed to have forgotten everything and were jubilant. So much so that no one noticed. On the second floor of Fairy Tale, a solemn atmosphere that was completely out of tune with the jubilant atmosphere of the guild was permeated in a corner. There were 4 people in that corner. They were none other than Raxas and the 3 members of the Thunder God Council. Looking down at Noah, who was surrounded by a group of people and had entered an endless toasting scenario, continuously drinking cup after cup of wine with a bitter smile on his face, Laxus tightened his grip on the guardrail bit by bit. The emotion surging in his eyes was an unprecedented kind of madness. At this moment, the only thing that reverberated in Laxus's mind was the sentence that Makarov had said in a state of ecstasy. Fairy Tale's next guild leader. Thinking of this sentence, Laxus's heart surged with a wave of violent emotions. Even his eyes turned red. In the end, you still chose to let that kind of person inherit the guild. How long do you want this guild to be a coward, old man? Standing behind Laxus, Fried, Bikesro, Alba, and Jerlin were silent. This was because they knew what this news meant to Raxus. Letting that kind of person who pays attention to trash become the guild leader, what's the point of this guild? Laxus was in a state of madness. This guild doesn't need weaklings. Since you don't understand, let me tell you. Chapter 422. It wasn't until the sky had completely darkened that the sounds of jubilation from A Fairy Tale finally stopped and disappeared without a trace. Katja, in a room on the top floor of Fairy Tale, the door was opened with a soft sound. Mira and Lisanna each held one of Noah's arms and carefully helped Noah, who was walking a little unsteadily, into the room. They gently put Noah on the bed before letting out a sigh of relief. Big brother Noah, you can't do this. Lisanna looked at Noah, who was lying on the bed with his originally dark and deep eyes filled with haziness. He even reached out his hand to cover his head. Lisanna panted and complained to Noah in a complaining tone. Undoubtedly, you don't drink often, and you don't even drink at all. How can you drink so much today? Ugh. Noah moved his body as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he gave up because of the dizziness in his head. He covered his head and made a sound that didn't make any sound. It couldn't be helped. Noah really drank too much today. Almost from the start of Makarov's banquet in the morning, Noah had been toasted by his companions in Fairy Tale, one by one. Among them, some were sincerely offering their blessings to Noah. People like Naz, Gray, Elfman, and the others, who didn't usually drink, made an exception and drank a little today. It was to offer their blessings to Noah. Naturally. It was inevitable that they would toast to Noah. On the other hand, some of them were purely evil and wanted to make fun of Noah. For example, Kana, Makeo, Wakaba, Jet, Troy, and the others, who were all older members. Just to see Noah make a fool of himself, or just for the fun, or even because a popular girl like Mira was snatched away by Noah, they all toasted Noah, looking like they wouldn't give up until they got Noah drunk. Then, there were people like Lucy, Lebby, and Alusha who followed the surrounding atmosphere in a state of confusion and toasted Noah. As a result, throughout the day, Noah was constantly toasted. He kept drinking. The heavens took pity on him. Before this, Noah didn't drink at all. Today, he was forced to drink so much wine, even more than Kana's wine barrel. If it wasn't for Noah's extraordinary physique, at this moment, he probably wouldn't just feel a little dizzy, causing him to become drunk. Well, Lisanna, you don't have to blame Noah. Noah is so happy. Mira seemed to be worried about Noah. She sat on the edge of the bed and gently patted Noah's chest while wiping Noah's face with a handkerchief. Just like a wife who was taking care of her husband who had gotten drunk while socializing outside. Moreover, this is all due to the good intentions of our companions in the guild. Noah is so gentle. It's normal for her not to reject him. But, he really drank too much. Looking at Noah, who seemed to be very uncomfortable. A pained expression appeared on Lasana's face. Big brother Noah didn't drink before. That's true. Mira also smiled bitterly, but still used an extremely gentle method. He helped Noah soothe his breathing and wipe his face. If this happens again, we have to stop it. Yes. Lisana nodded heavily and sat on the edge of the bed. She gently patted Noah's chest. After a while, she seemed to have thought of something and her face turned slightly red. Then, with big brother Noah in this state, does someone have to stay behind to take care of him tonight? Mira was stunned when she heard Lasana's words. She then looked at Lisana with amusement. Do you want to stay behind to accompany Noah tonight? Big sister Mira, Lisana said to Mira as if she was throwing a tantrum. Big sister Mira, are you okay with big brother Noah staying alone in the guild like this? That's true. Mira immediately held her face in distress. Tonight, you should stay here to look after Noah. Lisana was stunned. Big sister Mira, are you going to stay too? Mira blinked her beautiful big eyes. Or do you want to stay here alone and do something with Noah that I can't see? No. Lisana felt a little guilty. In fact, Mira was also feeling a little shy. Being alone with Noah. This pair of sisters who were infatuated with Noah would definitely be happy to see that. However, if they were alone, it meant that they could do something that only lovers could do. Women all yearned for the love of their beloved men. Both Mira and Lisana yearned for intimacy with Noah. However, this pair of sisters seemed to have thought of something that was not suitable for children and raised the level of intimacy by many levels. That was why they became shy. Although they knew that the other party had already given their hearts and minds to Noah, neither Mira nor Lisana revealed this matter. They deliberately pretended to be confused. If they were to reveal it openly, it would be too embarrassing. However, the two bashful girls didn't know how tempting their blushing and bashful appearance was to a man who had already tasted their beauty and fallen into a half-conscious state. With two short screams, Mira and Lisana felt themselves being pulled by someone. Then, with a forceful tug, they fell to the ground. In the next moment, a man with a strong masculine aura and a strong smell of alcohol turned over and pressed the two girls under him. His body temperature rose slightly, causing his body to be scorching hot. Noah, brother Noah? Only then did Mira and Lisana react. Looking at Noah, who was lying on top of them with a sinister look on his face due to his drunken stupor, they let out another cry of surprise. The one closest to Noah was Mira. That was why Noah, who had been attracted by Mira's cry, turned to look at her slightly opened mouth. Ugh! Shortly after, a pained sound came from Mira's mouth. It was the sound of Mila's lips being roughly covered by Noah's mouth. Ugh! Mira subconsciously closed her eyes, but she did not forget the fact that her younger sister was watching. She immediately whimpered in an attempt to avoid Noah's kiss. However, before she could succeed, her lips were pried open by a skillful force, and her tongue was captured. Ugh! TSK. Ugh! Mira's body trembled slightly, and she was at a loss for what to do. Sounds of lips and tongue intertwining could be heard from the corner of her mouth. Lisana, who saw all this, was stunned and could not react at all. With 2 layers of clothes between them, Noah could clearly feel the softness of their bodies. Coupled with the fact that he was touching Mira's lips and tongue, an indescribably wonderful feeling was transmitted to Noah's nerves along with the fragrance of a young girl. Noah captured Mira's delicate tongue and entangled it even more tightly with it. Mira could only use a strength that could not even kill a mosquito, as if she wanted to break free from Noah's intimacy. However, her cheeks were already flushed red, and her body trembled subconsciously. Her large breasts were pressed tightly against Noah's body, and she subconsciously used her tongue to cater to him while gently twisting her body. This kind of inadvertent seduction naturally made Noah's emotions even more aroused, and he became even more engrossed in the kiss. Soft gasps could be heard from Noah and Myra's lips. Noah had already entered a state of intoxication from the double meaning, and he could not help but feel a wave of heat surge up his body. He held Mira and Lisanna tightly in front of him and reached for their soft breasts, kneading them. The two sisters of the Strauss family trembled heavily at the same time. Ugh, Mira, who was being hugged and kissed, could only let out an unclear trembling sound. Lisanna, who was lying under Noah in a daze, let out a clear cry. The feeling of her chest being ravaged made her react, and she realized what kind of situation she was in. Her beautiful face suddenly became incomparably red, and she got up in a panic. Big brother Noah, don't. Mira and Lisanna had never tried to serve Noah in the true sense of sisters. Now that they were aware of Noah's intentions, the two sisters were panicking. However, no matter how panicked they were, they could not escape from tonight's situation. Not long after, the clothes of the two girls fell to the ground amidst a series of delicate cries. The sound of panting sounded like music. Chapter 423. Ugh, when Noah woke up from his sleep, a burst of indescribable headache and a comfortable feeling assaulted him at the same time. Noah, who was wrapped in two extremely contradictory feelings, squeezed out a sound from his throat. My head hurts. Clutching his head, Noah's expression was so bitter that it could darken. But, my body feels so comfortable. Patting his head, Noah faintly opened his eyes. Immediately, he was startled and revealed an astonished expression. Woo! Letting out a sound like a puppy acting coquettishly to its owner, two white girls snuggled up to Noah's left and right and fell into a deep sleep. The white color here referred to the long and short hair color of the two young girls, as well as the rosy white color of the two young girls' bodies. It also referred to the extremely alluring skin color of the two young girls' bodies. At this very moment, Mira and Lisanna, the two sisters, were lying by Noah's side, tightly snuggling in his embrace. Their heads were pillowed on Noah's chest, and their beautiful faces carried an intoxicating blush as they slept peacefully. Because of this, the two girls' huge softness, which ordinary women couldn't compare to, were tightly pressed against Noah's chest under the blanket, giving Noah a feeling of softness that other things couldn't compare to. The reason why Noah felt so comfortable was all because of this. Being tightly surrounded by two delicate bodies that could make all men drool, no matter who it was, they would feel very comfortable. These two white girls. Naturally, they were the sisters of the Strauss family. Looking at Myra's and Lisanna's enviable white skin and seductive little faces, which faintly revealed from the blanket, they slept peacefully. Noah quivered, and all the memories in his mind returned in an instant. Yes. Noah still remembered what happened last night. Although he had been forced to drink by almost all the archmages in fairy tale, his body was much stronger than his own. However, Noah's body was much stronger than the average person's. Even though it was the first time he drank so much, he was still half drunk and half sober, maintaining half of his consciousness. Thus, Noah still remembered what happened last night in a daze. The memory of forcefully pulling Mira and Lisanna onto his bed. While Mira and Lisanna were extremely bashful, they stripped the two girls of their clothes without giving them any chance to explain. The memory of Mira and Lisanna pressing down on the two sisters, despite their resistance. The memory of hugging these two beautiful girls, listening to their soft moans, and entangling with Mira and Lisanna for an entire night. These memories all returned to Noah's mind. Together with the physical pleasure brought about by last night's entanglement, Noah's heart was shaken. As the saying goes, a gentle home is a hero's grave. Being embraced by the gentleness of these two little demonesses, no matter how firm Noah's heart was, it was unavoidable that it would melt. Especially when he thought of the pleasure brought about by last night's entanglement, Noah almost didn't want to get out of bed. He might as well hug his two future wives and sleep like a log. Truly a love-hate relationship. Noah reached out his hand with such feelings. He gently smoothed out the bangs on Mira and Lasana's foreheads that were slightly sweaty due to their hard work all night, leaving a light kiss on each of their foreheads. This action was very gentle, and shouldn't have woken up those who were sleeping soundly. Lisana, who appeared to be a little sluggish, was indeed still sleeping soundly, but Mira seemed to have sensed something. Her eyelids trembled slightly, and she opened her eyes, which were filled with moisture. Her eyes, which were still a little blurry, opened. Noah, who was just about to get out of bed, was surprised to see Mira open her eyes. Sorry. Did I wake you up? Oh. Mira raised her hazy eyes and stared at Noah. After a while, she gave him a dazed smile. Allah, are you awake? Seeing Mira's dazed appearance, Noah knew that this girl's hidden nature was showing its existence. She still didn't realize what was going on, and didn't remember the absurdity of last night. At that moment, Noah mischievously moved the hand that was hidden under the blanket and gently stroked one of Mira's round breasts. Feeling the strange sensation on her chest, Mira finally woke up. She looked at Noah, who was looking at her with a teasing expression, and then glanced at Lisana, who was sleeping soundly on the other side. Her face, which was originally a little red, slowly became rosy, and she even puffed up her cheeks. Noah, you're very naughty. You don't like it? Noah lightly kissed Mira's sweaty, red face. I'm very willing to be naughty to you. That won't do. Mira pressed her slender and beautiful index finger against Noah's forehead and pushed Noah's face away. She was fuming with anger as she spoke. I already said I don't want it, and you're still being naughty. I'll get angry. You'll really get angry? Noah raised an eyebrow and smiled faintly. His hand also moved back and forth on Mira's body. Then I'll have to be naughty all the time. Feeling Noah's naughty hand, Mira blushed and slapped it away. She glared fiercely at Noah, but that appearance was cute no matter how one looked at it. I'll really get angry. That's why I have to be naughty all the time, Noah said matter-of-factly. Who asked Mira to be so cute when she's angry? Hearing this, Mira's cheeks puffed up more and more, and a trace of indignation appeared in her hazy eyes. However, she didn't resist Noah's naughty hands anymore. Instead, she snuggled in Noah's arms and let him play his naughty tricks. In the past, when I wanted to hear you say that, you wouldn't say it, of course. Mira was referring to what happened 2 years ago before Noah left this world. Back then, Noah had met Mira, Elfman, and Lisana in that small village. After some trouble, the 3 siblings, who had nowhere else to go, were led to Fairy Tale. Before that, Mira had always felt guilty towards Elfman and Lisana. After all, Mira had always thought that she was the one who had caused Elfman and Lisana to fall to such a state. If it weren't for the fact that they had run into a church where demons were causing trouble and were possessed by them, they wouldn't have been chased away by others. If they hadn't been chased away, Elfman and Lisana wouldn't have had to live a homeless life with Mira. That was what Mira thought until she met Noah. Therefore, meeting Noah and the fact that her fate had changed because of Noah made Mira's guilt towards her siblings turn into gratitude towards Noah. Furthermore, she was still a child at the time, and because of her ignorance towards relationships, it was easy for her to become diligent and engraved in her heart. Thus, after spending some time together, Mira gradually became attracted to Noah. If not for this, as one of the few geniuses in Fairy Tale, who had become an S-rank archmage before reaching adulthood, Mira might not have taken a fancy to Noah. However, the truth was the truth. Mira had indeed fallen in love with Noah when she was young. Mira must have always wanted to hear Noah's affirmation of a woman's charm since she was young. Understanding this, Noah suddenly felt a strong sense of pity for Mira. I'm sorry. Driven by such emotions, Noah's hand that was playing tricks on Mira turned to embrace her slender waist, and he hugged her tightly. I've made you wait for so long. Mira reluctantly went along with Noah's strength and hugged Noah tightly, revealing her usual gentle and enchanting smile. It's all right. After saying that, Mira raised her hand and looked at the engagement ring on her finger with a blissful smile. It doesn't matter anymore. That's right, it didn't matter anymore. After all, the waiting had finally paid off. That was why Mira didn't have any regrets, nor did she complain. There was only endless satisfaction. This made Noah's heart melt, and he smiled. Ugh. Lisanna turned around and let out a sleep-talking sound. Big brother Noah and Mira looked at each other and smiled. Hugging Mira and Lisanna tightly, Noah kissed his two fiancés' foreheads again, enjoying the rare moment of peace. Chapter 424. Why is it so late? It doesn't make sense. Mira-chan and Lisanna-chan aren't here. Where did they go? There's never been two people like this before. Are they not here yet? I'm hungry. In the hall on the first floor of Fairy Tale, some of the idlers in the guild were gathered together. However, almost everyone was sighing, whispering, and even brazenly making a ruckus. This was because, until now, the two most famous girls in Fairy Tale had not arrived yet. This was indeed something that had never happened before. In the past, even if something happened, at least one of them would be present. But today, Mira and Lisanna were not present, which made many people complain. Mira and Lisanna's roles in Fairy Tale were similar to that of waiters. Occasionally, they would help Makarov with the guild's affairs and miscellaneous tasks. They could be said to be two indispensable members of the guild. Now that they suddenly did not come, even if there were no guild affairs and chores to be done, the guild members who were waiting for the beautiful and cute girls to serve them food and drink also lost their energy. Under such circumstances, Noah came down from upstairs. When they saw Noah, many of the magic shooter's spirits were lifted, and they started to shout. Yo, Noah, where are your two fiancés? Why haven't they come yet? We're all hungry. And we can't order any wine. I always feel so lonely. Hurry up and call your two fiancés over. Yes, yes. Hearing the teasing voices from his companions, Noah could not help but feel guilty. Could he tell them that the two fiancés they were talking about were now lying in Noah's room to rest because they were tormented by Noah last night? Presumably, in the next moment, Noah would be surrounded by all the male members who were envious of him, and would be full of resentment and make him drunk again. When he thought of this, Noah's head that was faintly aching from the hangover felt dizzy again, and he could not help but speak loudly. You still say that the banquet was so lively yesterday, but in the end, the ones who served tea were Mira and Lisanna. Who knows how tired they are now? Saying such a flawless lie, Noah confidently announced. Today, Mira and Lisanna asked for leave. I will let them rest to the extent that they will not wake up to work until tomorrow. So, what you want to eat and drink, you'd better think of it yourself. When these words came out, there was an uproar. Don't. Noah. You can't be so cruel. Although she is your fiancée, she is also our guild signature girl. My Mira sauce, what? Mira sauce? She is already someone else's fiancée. Heavens. I don't have the motivation to work today. Yes, yes. Suddenly, a group of fellows who were not serious all day began to make a racket. Their cries were miserable. Those who did not know would definitely think that someone in their family had died, causing many onlookers to look at them with disdain. Ignoring the noise of the people around him, Noah walked into the hall, looked around, and fixed his gaze in one direction. There, Alusha had arrived early and was sitting in front of a table. She was not wearing her usual armor, but an ordinary inner shirt and a blue pleated skirt. This might have been strange in the past, but ever since the collapse of the Paradise Tower, Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miriana regained their freedom and went out to travel, Alusha no longer often showed up in armor. Occasionally, she would be like this, going into battle lightly. However, at this moment, Alusha was seriously flipping through a book. This scene surprised Noah. Alusha is reading a book? This is really rare. With this thought, Noah quietly walked behind Alusha and looked at the book in front of her through Alusha. When he confirmed the content of the book, his expression was strange. This was because Alusha was not flipping through a book, but a magazine. It was a magazine that displayed beautiful wedding dresses on almost every page. In other words, Alusha was so focused that she did not even notice Noah approaching her from behind. What she was looking at was not profound knowledge, but just wedding dresses. This made Noah recall Alusha's behavior when Mira and Lisanna announced their engagement to him yesterday. That strange look proved that Alusha did not seem to have any immunity to the word marriage. In addition, Alusha was still looking at the wedding dresses. Was it for Mira and Lisanna's reference? Noah clearly said yesterday that he was only temporarily engaged with Mira and Lisanna, and would not get married immediately. Therefore, Alusha should not be looking at it for Mira and Lisanna's reference. Then, there was only one answer. Alusha seemed to have a strong interest in marriage. Could it be that she was looking forward to getting married? Or, like Lisanna, she was looking forward to the scene of her being a bride? Could Alusha be so cute? At this moment, Noah resisted the urge to laugh and patted Alusha's shoulder. Whoa! Noah just patted her lightly, but Alusha immediately screamed as if she had met a ghost. She jumped up and turned her head, looking at Noah with a lingering fear. Noah. Noah. It's me. The corner of Noah's mouth twitched. Why do you have such a big reaction? No, nothing. Alusha shook her head exaggeratedly. It's really nothing. Is it? Noah looked at Alusha with a faint smile. But not only is your expression not convincing at all, it makes your behavior very suspicious. It's nothing like that. Alusha's face tightened, as if she wanted to return to her usual expression. However, she did not know if it was because she was too nervous, but her expression was stiff. I'm still the same as usual. You don't even believe your own words, right? Noah glanced at the wedding dress magazine on the table and asked amusedly. Are you looking at wedding dresses? No. This time, not only Alusha's expression, but even her tone became stiff. Just casually looking. Casually looking? Noah continued to laugh, and his laughter became more and more uncontrollable. Yes. Alusha continued to pretend, but she was a little guilty. Just as Noah and Alusha continued to be in a stalemate, the door of the guild opened. Everyone. Good morning. In the cheerful greeting, Lucy walked in from outside. Lucy. Alusha seemed to have seen her savior, and quickly changed the topic to Lucy. Are you alone? Yes, Naz and Gray seem to be still sleeping because they drank at the banquet yesterday. Lucy walked in from outside, looked around, and made such a puzzled voice. There seemed to be fewer people today. After Lucy said this, Noah and Alusha also noticed this. It seems to be a lot fewer than usual. Alusha finally recovered her usual heroic appearance, glanced around, and frowned. Yesterday, we were still having a banquet here. Today, Mira and Lisanna are not here. Without the consent of the two people appointed by the president, even if we accept the mission, we can't immediately execute it. Where did everyone go? Could it be that like Naz and Gray, they were all drunk yesterday? Lucy raised this speculation. So, everyone is resting at home? Maybe that's the case. Noah narrowed his eyes, and a trace of thoughtfulness gradually appeared in his eyes. But I don't know why, I always feel that it's not the case. When this sentence fell from Noah's mouth, a voice full of arrogance sounded from the second floor. Isn't that good? Hearing this voice, Noah paused, then raised his head and looked at the second floor. The next moment, a man in a fur collar, leaning his hand against the railing on the second floor and looking at Noah with an extremely unruly expression was imprinted in Noah's eyes. Seeing this person, Alusha's frown deepened, Lucy's expression became a little stiff, and even the noise in the guild disappeared. Because that's Lax's. Chapter 425. The guild, which had been extremely noisy just a second ago, suddenly seemed to have been cut off by someone, and the noise disappeared without a trace. Every guild member obediently shut their mouths when Lax's appeared. This was not out of respect for Lax's, it was just a subconscious action. After all, to the members of Fairy Tale, Lax's may more or less represent the feeling of a comrade, but more of the feeling of danger. Everyone felt that Lax's was very dangerous. It was like a class full of obedient students suddenly having a delinquent in all aspects appear out of nowhere. Everyone felt that this person was dangerous, not because this person would hurt them, but because they did not want to interact with such a person and get involved in unnecessary trouble. Thus, under normal circumstances, when Laxes appeared, other than a few people, no one would open their mouth to speak unless something unexpected happened. Thus, under such circumstances, the only one present who would fearlessly confront Laxes, other than Noah, was Elusha. Laxes. Elusha took a step forward, her sharp eyes staring at Laxes, who was leaning against the railing on the second floor. What do you mean by that? This sentence again. Do you have to ask me what I mean every time I speak before you understand? Laxes glanced at Elusha, a trace of mockery appearing in his eyes. It's too early for a mere Elusha to question me. What did you say? Elusha did not expect Laxes to find fault with her the moment he opened his mouth, her delicate face showing traces of anger. Just as she was about to say something, she was stopped by Noah. Then do I have the right to question you? Noah put one hand on Elusha's shoulder, his gaze had already moved to Laxes. Laxes, what did you mean by that sentence just now? TSK, you haven't even become the guild leader and you're already putting on airs? As if deliberately going against Noah, Laxes's tone became even more unruly, even his eyes became irritable. My dear brother, of all people, why did you have to learn from that old man? All day long, you care about those weak people who don't need to exist. Trash. If they disappear, then they disappear. Is there a need to pay special attention to them? You. Understanding Laxes's meaning, the anger on Elusha's face became more and more intense. Really bad. Even Lucy could not help but let out such a mutter, her face full of resistance towards Laxes. That kind of person, why is his companion in the guild? Regarding Elusha and Lucy's words, Noah's gaze, he was still staring closely at Laxes, his eyes. Intuition told Noah that this matter was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. At the beginning, didn't you not notice that those weak people who weren't here didn't come today? That's enough to prove that the weak don't need to have any sense of existence, right? Laxes's mouth gradually curved into a happy arc. It seemed that only Noah was left in his eyes. Don't bother with those trash who only drag us down. It's better to just let all those useless people in the guild disappear. Saying such a sentence, Laxes's gaze swept across everyone below. Those who met Laxes's gaze all lowered their heads. Including Lucy, except for Noah and Elusha, no one present dared to look at Laxes. Laxes curled his lips in boredom and made such a declaration. Fairy tale does not need weaklings. You will understand. Leaving this sentence, Laxes turned around and left everyone's sight. It was only at this time that his companions in the guild began to whisper. What, that guy, that's really annoying. Why did that guy have to be an S-rank magic shooter, and the grandson of the guild leader? That's right, fortunately, the next guild leader is Noah, otherwise, I wouldn't want to join a guild that was inherited by that guy. I feel the same. Similar conversations like this began to ring out from the surrounding crowd. However, probably because Laxes had not gone far, and they were worried that Laxes would hear them, the guild members lowered their voices. But Noah, Elusha, and Lucy still heard it clearly. In this regard, Lucy expressed her agreement. That kind of inhumane guy as the guild leader, I really can't imagine. Lucy said to Noah excitedly. Noah, you must not lose to that kind of guy, let that kind of guy become the guild leader. The guild leader already said yesterday that the next guild leader of Fairy Tale is Noah. Since the guild leader said so, most likely, it will not change. Elusha calmed down and stared in the direction that Laxes had left. It's just that I have an ominous feeling. Hearing this, Noah fell silent. Because, in Noah's heart, he had the same feeling. Don't bother about that guy. Lucy, on the other hand, had been very indignant. She sat down, and when she saw the wedding dress magazine on the table, she immediately picked it up out of curiosity. Isn't this a wedding dress? Could it be that Noah is choosing a wedding dress for Mira and Lasana's wedding in the future? But the wedding date hasn't been set yet, right? No, it's not like that. The serious expression on Alusha's face collapsed in an instant. She blushed and stuttered. Huh? Lucy was stunned. So, you're saying that it's not Noah who's watching, but you, Alusha? Ahahaha, Noah shook his head when he saw that the atmosphere in the guild had returned to normal. Hopefully, I'm just overthinking things. The next day, in Noah's room, Noah, who had just gotten up, hugged the shoulders of Mira and Lisanna, who were chatting in their own room, and lay down. Mira and Lisanna snuggled up in Noah's arms as they flipped through a magazine in front of Noah, conversing with each other with relish. This one is so beautiful. Really? I like this one better. Mira and Lisanna were flipping through the magazine with gusto. It was the same one that Alusha had been reading yesterday. Because she bumped into Lucy when she went downstairs and Lucy casually mentioned this matter, Lisanna, who was looking forward to being a bride, borrowed the magazine from the uncomfortable Alusha and took it out to talk about it with Mira during her free time. Not only did they discuss it with each other, but they also asked Noah about the wedding dress they liked. Hey, big brother Noah. Lisanna pointed at one of the wedding dresses in the magazine and asked excitedly. What do you think of me wearing this on our wedding day? I like this one. It was rare for Mira to be as stubborn as Lisanna when it came to wedding dresses. She pointed at a wedding dress on the other side. Noah, what do you think? I think they all look good. Noah naturally understood that his two fiancés were so enthusiastic because they could marry him. Thus, Noah showed sufficient attention. But I think Mira looks better in this one. As for Lisanna, I think she'll look better in this one. Seeing that Noah was paying so much attention to the wedding dress, Mira and Lisanna seemed to be very happy. Even their spirits seemed to have risen. Noah, look at this one. Big brother Noah, look at this one too. See if it suits me. Thus, the man and the two women began chatting about the wedding dresses. The smiles on Mira and Lisanna's faces never disappeared. Even the surrounding atmosphere became a little warm. Under such circumstances, Mira and Lisanna even forgot that they had to go downstairs to work. One had to know that Mira and Lisanna did not go to the guild yesterday at Noah's request. Now, there must be many people looking forward to Mira and Lisanna's appearance. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Noah. At that moment, a hurried voice sounded from outside the door. The door to Noah's room was pushed open. Under the shocked gazes of Noah, Mira, and Lisanna, Alusha quickly walked into the room and said with a solemn expression. Something happened. Chapter 426. Grandpa. Leading Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha downstairs, Noah immediately saw Makarov sitting at the bar. Then, he noticed the strange atmosphere that pervaded Fairy Tale. At this moment, the number of people in the guild could only be described as pitiful. Noah counted and found that there were only a dozen or so people in the guild. This was simply inconceivable to Fairy Tale. After all, even though Fairy Tale didn't take in as many members as Phantom Lord did, and even opened up branches everywhere and had all kinds of people in the guild, as the number one guild in the kingdom of Fiore, Fairy Tale had at least a few hundred members, if not 1,000. And yet, there were only a dozen or so people in the guild. Wasn't this inconceivable? With yesterday's events still fresh in his mind, Noah exchanged glances with Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha before walking towards Makarov, who was sitting at the bar. Anyone could see how dangerous Makarov was sitting at the bar. That's right. It was dangerous. At this moment, the mana belonging to the 10 great saint archmages that could shake space revolved around Makarov's body in an extremely obscure manner, making the space around Makarov seem to have suddenly become heavier and extremely heavy. As for Makarov, he lowered his head and silently looked at the entire guild. His aged eyes flickered with barely detectable rage and irritation. None of the remaining members of the dozen or so guilds dared to open their mouths, causing the atmosphere to become strangely quiet. However, no one would blame Makarov. It was only natural for Makarov to behave this way. To Makarov, the members of Fairy Tale were almost all his children, and the guild was Makarov's home. His children's whereabouts were unknown, and the originally lively home had become extremely quiet. It was already very good that Makarov didn't fly into a rage on the spot. But even so, Makarov still fell into a state where he could explode at the slightest provocation. The heavy magic that pervaded his body made Mira and Alusha, the two active S-ranked archmages, unable to breathe. Lisana's beautiful face paled, and she almost knelt on the ground. This was the magic of one of the 10 Saint Magi. It had to be known that Makarov's ranking among the 10 great Saint Magi was considered to be near the top. In this way, even if Makarov didn't completely detonate his magic, the trace of magic that leaked out was enough to intimidate most S-ranked archmages. Therefore, other than Noah, no one else was able to remain calm in the face of Makarov's magic power that seemed to explode around him. Raising his hand, Noah gently hugged the pale-faced Lisana, and then braved the magic that was rolling out from Makarov's body and came in front of Makarov. "Grandfather, Noah." Makarov didn't even raise his head as he spoke with a gloomy expression. "Is there any problem on your side?" "Mira, Lisana, and I are all fine." Noah shook his head. However, Mira and Lisana just contacted home and found that Elfman wasn't around. "I'm afraid that he's also missing." "Even Elfman is missing?" Makarov's expression grew more and more unsightly. What in the world happened? What had happened? He believed that no one present didn't want to know the answer. And Noah finally confirmed that the ominous feeling he and Alusha had was indeed true. Since yesterday, the members of Fairy Tale had been disappearing one after another, and there was no news of their whereabouts. It wasn't just Elfman. Naz, Gray, Hubby, and Lucy, Lebby, Kana, and the others who had shown their faces in the guild had all disappeared without a trace. Sensing that something was wrong, Makarov immediately went to the guild and sent people to check the houses of the members who hadn't shown up. In the end, he couldn't find a single person at home. In other words, just like yesterday, the Fairy Tale Guild had lost a few members today. Moreover, it was a crushing loss, to the point that there were only a dozen or so members left. Why would so many members of Fairy Tale suddenly disappear for no reason? Even a fool could guess that something had happened. Brother Elfman, and everyone. Under such circumstances, Lisana worriedly asked the question that everyone was concerned about. There shouldn't be anything wrong, right? Everyone present was silent. This was because no one could give a 100% answer to this question. Who in the world is it? Alusha clenched her fists tightly. A strong light bloomed from her body, and she changed into her usual armor, revealing an extremely dangerous expression. Who on earth is targeting Fairy Tale? Hearing Alusha's angry words, Mira just hugged Lisana tightly and fell into silence. Noah once again looked around the entire guild. Looking at the scene where there were only a dozen people left, his eyes grew colder and colder. Originally, I thought that it was already very rare for a Phantom Lord to stand up and die, but I didn't expect that in this world, there would never be a lack of people who had lived for too long. Could it be that if it was just a Phantom Lord, there would be no way for the whole world to know the consequences of provoking Fairy Tale? Moreover, this time, it wasn't as simple as touching the guild's buildings, but directly touching the people in Fairy Tale. Not to mention Noah, even Makarov wouldn't let this matter rest. But who else would want to provoke the Fairy Tale? In such a heavy atmosphere, an arrogant laugh suddenly rang out. Oh. So many of them have disappeared? Hearing this, everyone raised their heads and looked at the second floor of the guild building. Soon after, everyone's expression changed. A bunch of weak and pitiful people, disappearing just like that makes the whole guild much more pleasing to the eye, Laxas said arrogantly under everyone's gazes. Why don't we just ignore them? Old man. Laxas. Makarov glared at Laxas, the veins on his temples bulging as he growled. Are you trying to make me angry? You. In a situation where he couldn't even ensure the safety of his companions, Laxus still dared to provoke him. Elusha couldn't take it anymore. Mira and Lysana also glared at Laxus, their faces filled with malice. Laxus. Only Noah stared at Laxus's arrogant face. The coldness in his eyes made Mira and the others' hearts palpitate. This matter can't have anything to do with you, right? Everyone suddenly fell silent. Makarov, Elusha, Mira, Lysana, and the others, who were originally furious, were all shocked by Noah's sudden words. What did Noah mean? Was he suspecting Laxus? Facing Noah's cold gaze, the smile on Laxus's face grew wider and wider, but there wasn't a single trace of a smile in his eyes. Who knows? Seeing that Laxus didn't deny it, the remaining people in the guild looked at each other. Laxus. Makarov said in a low voice with a heavy expression. You should know that this is not a joke, right? Joke? Laxus glanced at Makarov and sneered. Unfortunately, I've never joked. After saying that, Laxus completely ignored everyone present. He didn't leave any explanation, nor did he make any obvious denial. Just like that, he turned around and left. Seeing this, everyone fell silent. Chapter 427. Seeing Laxus's figure disappear in the direction of the second floor, the remaining members of Fairy Tale began to whisper to each other. It can't really be Laxus, right? It can't be, right? But, hasn't that guy always hated the people in the guild? Moreover, the guild leader has already announced that Noah will be the next leader of Fairy Tale. Hasn't Laxus always wanted to inherit this guild? It's not impossible for him to fly into a rage out of humiliation and do something like that, right? Now that you mention it, all of a sudden, the remaining members of the guild began to speculate one after another, echoing throughout the entire guild. Big brother Noah, Lysana said hesitantly. Is it really Laxus? Even Laxus wouldn't do something like that, right? Mira said somewhat gloomily. We're all companions, why are you suspecting Laxus? Even Elusha couldn't seem to believe that Laxus was related to the disappearance of the members of the guild who hadn't arrived yet, so she asked Noah. Did you find out anything? Makarov also looked at Noah, his eyes filled with heartache and an unprecedented seriousness. If the disappearance of the members of the guild really had something to do with Laxus, then as Laxus's grandfather, Makarov felt that he had to take responsibility for everything. Facing the gazes of the crowd, Noah frowned and waved his hand. Don't worry, I'm just testing Laxus. Although I have my suspicions, I haven't really found out what Laxus has done. Hearing this, Makarov breathed a sigh of relief, and the expressions of the members of the guild also softened imperceptibly. Seeing this scene, Noah couldn't help but smile bitterly. Noah didn't say anything. Although he hadn't found out what Laxus had done, after the probing and understanding of Laxus, Noah still felt that Laxus was still a suspect. After all, Laxus's mentality was abnormally twisted. After knowing that Noah would become the next guild leader of Fairy Tale, it was possible that he would do something irrational. Moreover, Laxus had always hated the so-called weaklings. The members of the guild who had gone missing were simply a thorn in his side to him. Who knew if he would think of getting rid of them? If it was Laxus, it wasn't impossible for him to do something like that. With such a heavy thought, Noah shook his head and turned to the remaining members of the guild. The most important thing right now is to find the whereabouts of the missing people as soon as possible. Let's move out together and search Magnolia first. After all, this phenomenon only started yesterday. Even if someone has captured our companions, they won't be able to transport them anywhere in a day. With that said, Noah looked around at everyone present. Remember, no matter what the existence that can make our companions go missing is, since even Naz, Gray, and Elfman can't resist, it's best that we don't act alone. At least form a team of 5, understand? Got it. The members of the guild nodded and formed their own teams. Then, they left the guild and went to Magnolia to search for their companions' whereabouts. In the blink of an eye, only Noah, Mira, Lysana, Elusha, and Makarov were left in the guild. No. There was still one person left. That. The somewhat bashful young girl spoke with a hint of panic in her voice. What should I do? Noah only just noticed that there was another person present. When he saw the person's full appearance, he was surprised. Julian? You're here too? Yes. Seeing Noah's gaze turn to him, Julian's head shrank back as if he was still a little afraid. But unlike last time, he mustered up his courage. Julian wants to help, but he doesn't know what to do. Noah, Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Julian had just joined Fairy Tale not long ago, so he wasn't familiar with many of the people in Fairy Tale. Therefore, even if he wanted to help, Julian, who had yet to remember the faces of everyone in Fairy Tale, couldn't help at all. Julian. Makarov stepped forward. Where's Gadjaloo? Is Gadjaloo missing as well? Julian doesn't know. Mr. Gadjaloo doesn't often interact with others. The Aqua girl seemed to have finally found something she could do, and her expression became a little excited. Julian, try to get in touch with Mr. Gadjaloo. Okay. Makarov nodded heavily. I'll have to trouble you. Yes. After replying, Zhu Bian's body directly turned into water and sprinkled on the ground, disappearing without a trace. Looking at the place where Julian disappeared, Makarov's expression became uncertain. Laxas, is it really you? Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and the others chose to keep quiet, trying not to provoke Makarov. Grandpa. Only Noah said to Makarov after sighing. Let's go and see if there are any clues. I'll have to trouble you to take care of the guild. Go. Makarov reacted and waved his hand decisively. I'm enough here. At the very least, I can activate the defense system you left behind. So, at least, nothing will happen here. Noah, Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha nodded one after another, then they looked at each other and walked out of the guild. As soon as they came out of the guild, Alusha immediately asked. Where should we start looking now? Let's go to Naz, Gray, and Lucy's house first. Noah answered without hesitation. Obviously, he already had an idea. Naz and Gray were at home yesterday. Lucy also stayed in the guild until night time before leaving. If they were really taken away by someone, then it's very likely that they were taken away at home. Let's go to their house and take a look. Maybe we can find some clues. Then let's go home too. Mira quickly said. Elfman may also be taken away at home. We may also find some clues at home. You guys? Noah hesitated. If it's just the two of you, will it be okay? Brother Noah, don't worry. Lisanna patted her full chest and pretended to be cheerful. I won't mention it for now. You know what Sister Mira is like when she's serious. With Sister Mira, we'll be fine. That's true. Alusha nodded in agreement. With Mira around, at least they won't disappear without a sound like Naz and the others. Hearing that, Noah lowered his head and muttered to himself for a while. After a while, he nodded reluctantly. Then, be careful. If you find anything, go back to the guild first. We'll gather there. Okay. The two nodded at the same time, turned around, and walked quickly in the direction of their houses. Then whose house should we go to first? Alusha looked at Noah. The closest house to here is Naz and Habi's house. It's on the other side of the forest. Let's go to Lucy's house first. Noah had a different opinion. Lucy only left the guild last night. It's very likely that she went missing later than Naz and Gray. If there are any clues left behind, it's only one night. If it's not done by someone, it won't be easy to eliminate the clues. So, let's start looking from there. Understood. Ilusa said in a strong and powerful voice. Her voice was filled with an extremely strong sense of self. If someone took them away, I'll let them know the consequences of stepping on the fairy tale's bottom line. Noah smiled indifferently and raised his head to look at the sky. The weather today was cloudy. The sky was always gray and covered by thick layers of dark clouds. It was like the calm before the storm, bringing with it a sense of oppression that made one's heart tremble. Chapter 428. In the corner of Magnolia, there was a river. Compared to Noah's secret base, which was the river in the forest, this river was not only much wider, but also much more lively. Because, in this river, from time to time, a boat would appear and pass by every place along the river. Lucy's house was on the opposite side of the river. It was a very ordinary house. According to Lucy herself, although this house was very ordinary, there was nothing wrong with it. Most importantly, the monthly rent was only 70,000 J, which was quite cost-effective. Therefore, when Lucy found out about this place, she did not hesitate to rent it. This reason, more or less, made people want to cry. However, compared to the girls' dormitory in Fairy Tale, Lucy still preferred this house. The reason was the same as the previous one, the problem of rent. The girls' dormitory in Fairy Tale costs 100,000 J per month, but this house only costs 70,000 J per month. For Lucy, this could be considered as saving a lot of money. As a member of the same team, Alusha often went in and out of Lucy's house, so she was quite familiar with Lucy's house. Therefore, under Alusha's lead, Noah speechlessly climbed into Lucy's house from the direction of the window. From this choice, Noah saw a fact. That is, when Alusha enters Lucy's house, she usually does not go through the front door. No, it should not only be Alusha, it is very likely that even Naz, Gray and the others are the same, who knows. While he silently felt sad for Lucy in his heart, Noah's attention was attracted by everything that was imprinted on his senses in the next moment. This was an extremely ordinary room. The decoration of the room was not very luxurious, and it was full of a homey atmosphere, making people unable to tell that this was a place where a rich young lady lived. However, there was indeed a rich young lady living in this place. It was obvious that the room belonged to a young girl. Even the smell in the air was fragrant, making one's mind feel comfortable. The only factors that made people feel comfortable were the air and decoration in the room. However, there were also factors that made people feel bad. Noah was sure that it was definitely a bad factor that did not exist before last night. It was precisely this terrible factor that attracted Noah's attention. Noah's nerves instantly tensed up. He closed his eyes and activated his sensing ability. Like tentacles, it extended to the surroundings and enveloped Lucy's entire room. At this time, Noah could clearly feel the existence of traces of strange mana. It was a demonic power that seemed to have just emerged from some abyss, carrying an extremely dense aura of evil and darkness. Noah had only ever felt such evil and dark magic from one person. The guild leader of the Phantom Lord, Joseph. Of course, Noah meant that the nature of the evil and dark mana was identical to Joseph's, not that the mana was identical to Joseph's. Unlike Joseph's, the traces of evil and dark mana that permeated Lucy's room seemed to be pure, and the aura inside was completely different from Joseph's. Therefore, the owner of these traces of evil and dark mana should be somewhat similar to Joseph in some aspects. For example, character. For example, magic. In short, this was definitely not the mana left behind by Lucy. And naturally, such mana could not have been left behind by Lax's. It seemed that, as Noah had guessed, the reason why Lucy and her party disappeared was entirely because someone had attacked them. This person should not be Lax's. At least, it would definitely not be Lax's himself. Although Lax's mana was also very special, that was because Lax's was a dragon slayer magic shooter. Like Naz, Gadjaloo, and Wendy, he had unique and extremely destructive mana. And Lax's mana was definitely not such dark and evil mana. This made Noah frown involuntarily. What's wrong? Alusha was just about to search Lucy's room when she caught a glimpse of Noah, who was frowning with his eyes closed, and asked suspiciously. Did you find anything? I found some residual mana. Noah did not hide it. He opened his eyes and spoke of his speculation. That's not Lucy's mana, nor is it the mana of anyone I know. You mean? Alusha's expression froze. Did someone really invade Lucy's room and take her away? As far as I'm concerned, this is the most likely possibility. Noah's brows were still tightly knitted. It's just that I can only find that the residual mana in the air here has a very evil and dark nature. Other than that, I can't get any clues. No, you've already got a very important clue. Elisha said loudly. At least, you've helped us confirm that someone is indeed attacking Fairy Tale and almost all of our guild's members have been taken away. Elisha said in a deep voice as she moved her arms that were wrapped in armor. Since you can detect the residual mana here, can you detect where the owner of the mana is? No. Noah shook his head. The other party must have used magic to capture Lucy, leaving traces of magic in this room, and then left. I can only feel the remnants of this strange magic in this room, and there's no trace of it anywhere else. After saying that, Noah looked at Elisha's heavy expression and softly comforted her. Even so, I've already remembered the other party's mana aura. As long as the owner of this mana appears in front of me again, I'll definitely be able to discover his true identity. Unless he can change his own aura, otherwise, he won't be able to hide it. That's good. Elisha breathed a sigh of relief. Then let's continue looking for clues. Noah nodded and went to Lucy's room with Elisha. Just as Noah and Elisha were making their way to Lucy's house, Mira and Lisanna were blocked on their way to their own house. Mira pulled Lisanna to her side as if she was protecting her. She repeatedly swept her gaze at the person blocking her way with a sorrowful expression on her face. Could it really be you guys? Are you the ones who kidnapped Big Brother Elfie and everyone in the guild? Lisanna shouted angrily. Hurry up and let everyone go. Thor's knights. The ones blocking Mira and Lisanna's way were none other than Rax's personal guards, the Thor Order. With Fried in the lead, Bikesro, Iba, and Jerlin stood on either side of him. The three of them were only looking at Mira, as if they were intentionally ignoring Lisanna's existence. Mira, Jenny. Lisanna. Alba, who was holding a fan and covering the lower half of her face, called out. You'd better come with us obediently. Laxus wants us to take you there. Bikesro stuck his tongue out and raised his hands in an exaggerated manner. If you don't listen to me obediently, then I can only let my baby play with you. I suggest you don't resist. We don't want to fight you. Fried looked up and stared at Mira. Even if the legendary demonkin were to fight against us, even if they could win, you don't have the confidence to protect your sister in battle, do you? Mira's expression changed slightly. Despicable bastard. Lisanna said angrily. Fight Sister Mira if you dare. Apologies, we only follow Laxus's orders. Fried's expression didn't change. In order to carry out Laxus's orders, we have no choice but to resort to despicable means. What's your goal? Mira bit her lip. What's your goal? You're wrong, Mira Jenny of the Demonkin. Albarglin chuckled. We don't have a goal from the beginning. Bikesro laughed strangely. Our goal is to help Laxus, and Laxus only has one goal. Fried turned around, as if he knew that Mira wouldn't resist anymore. The throne of the next guild master of Fairy Tale. Chapter 429. Bang! In Fairy Tale, Makarov, who was standing in front of the bar, crushed the wine glass in his hand. He didn't care that his hand was completely wet from the wine, and his face was filled with rage. R.A. Ka. Saw. See. It wasn't just Makarov. Even Alusa and the rest of the guild members wore angry expressions on their faces. It was obvious that they were furious. In the middle of everyone, Noah had his head lowered. His fringe drooped down slightly, covering Noah's expression. No one could tell what Noah was feeling at that moment. In Noah's hand, there was a letter. If you want your two lovely fiancés, then come find me. I'll bet on the title of the next president of Fairy Tale and the title of the strongest magic shooter. That was what was written on the letter. Without a doubt, it was written by Laxus. In other words, Laxus had captured Mira and Lysana and left a letter of challenge to Noah. It was all for the so-called throne of the next leader of fairy tale and the title of the strongest sorcerer in fairy tale. How childish. Laxus. Makarov roared in grief and anger. You've finally done what your father did. Have you done something you absolutely shouldn't do? Where are you? Makarov's roar reverberated throughout the entire fairy tale guild. Laxus. Where the hell are you? Seeing Makarov's furious roar, everyone in the guild bit their lips. At that moment, Alusha and the few remaining members were all filled with anger. It was anger towards their companions being captured by others. It was also anger towards the betrayal of their former companions. As members of the same guild, everyone in fairy tale had always regarded each other as the most important companions in their lives. Even if they didn't have a good relationship on the surface, when someone needed help, they would still step forward bravely. But now, one of their former companions didn't care about their friendship. Not only did he kidnap most of the members of the guild, he even openly sent a letter of challenge to the guild. It was as if he was trying to usurp the throne of fairy tale's leader. Who could tolerate this kind of betrayal? Even Naz, who valued his companions as much as his own life, would be furious if he knew about this. Even the simple-minded Naz was in such a state, not to mention the other members of the guild. Including Makarov, at that moment, everyone only had one thought. That was to find Laxus. Wang. At this moment, the air within the fairy tale guild began to vibrate. Pung. In the midst of the muffled sound of an explosion, a burst of violent magic exploded from Noah's body like a violent storm. His head was lowered, and his expression couldn't be seen clearly. That was enough magic to turn into a substance. In fairy tale, everyone could only see that Noah's body seemed to be wrapped in a brilliant white light. His clothes fluttered without wind, and an extremely vast amount of magic turned into a pure white pillar of light that rose from Noah's body. It passed through the ceiling, transmitted to the outside, and went straight into the clouds. Hoo! A sharp gust of wind was stirred up by the violent magic, blowing into every corner of the fairy tale. Rumble. The ground suddenly shook without any warning, as if there was an earthquake, shaking up and down. Ah! Everyone present let out a cry of surprise. Immediately after, they were blown back by the gust of wind formed by the vibrating magic power. There was a trace of horror in their eyes as they looked at Noah, who had a white pillar of light rising into the sky from all over his body. Especially Jalibian, looking at Noah who was in the middle of the white pillar of light and the sharp wind, his expression was full of fear as he recalled the day when the Phantom Lord was destroyed by Noah alone. Makarov raised his hand in front of himself, looking at Noah with shock in his eyes. How powerful is that magic? Alusha was the closest to Noah, so naturally, she was the one who was affected the most. Facing the turbulent flow of magic that blew on her body like a gale, her heart was terrified because of the overly powerful magic. Even her body felt a little heavy, which made Alusha want to kneel down and submit to Noah. Even Alusha was like this, then, except for Makarov, who among the magic shooters present could resist the power that surged from Noah's body like a volcanic eruption. Pa! After a while, a crisp sound rang out, and all the magic shooters in the guild involuntarily knelt down on one knee one after another. Zhu Bian fell to the ground with a look of horror on his face. Noah! Seeing this scene, Makarov hurriedly called out. Calm down. Noah! Calm down. Alusha also reacted and shouted in Noah's direction. That's Laxus. Even if he's really crazy, he won't do anything to Mira and Lysana before you go there. Mira and Lysana are very safe now, they're just waiting for you to save them. As soon as he said this, the whole space shook. The magic that had turned into a gale and a solid pillar of light stagnated. In the next second, all the magic used in fairy tales slowly retracted and surged into Noah's body. Thus, the gale gradually dissipated and the pillar of light dimmed. After a long time, all the magic that rose from Noah's body returned to his body. All the magic shooters present, who were either kneeling on the ground or sitting on the ground, raised their heads with lingering fear and looked in Noah's direction. With Noah as the center, the tables and chairs in Fairy Tale were all blown away and piled up by the wall, leaving a vast empty space around Noah. Everyone couldn't help but gulp when they thought of the boundless manna that caused this scene, which made them kneel on the ground. This was the magic that Makarov had been praising since Noah was a child. This was the magic that Jalal claimed that even if all the magic shooters in the world were gathered together, they wouldn't be able to obtain enough magic to rival 7 billion concepts by sacrificing Noah alone. After so many years, everyone finally saw the most outstanding magic strength of promise again, but it also made everyone's hearts shrink. Under such circumstances, Noah slowly raised his head and took a deep breath. His dark and deep eyes bloomed with a cold light that froze the air, and he said such a sentence. "Grandpa, my patience has reached its limit." "I understand." Makarov was silent for a moment, then sighed, as if he had suddenly become much older. "You are the next president of Fairy Tale, so it's up to you to decide how to deal with Laxes." Noah nodded silently, raised his feet, and walked out of the door. At the same time, Alusha also looked around, came to Julian's side, and spoke softly. "Julian, I'll leave this place to you." "Yes." Zhu Bian wiped the cold sweat off his face and nodded heavily. "Julian will work hard." "Please." After saying this, Alusha also raised her feet and followed behind Noah, walking out of the guild. It wasn't until Noah and Alusha disappeared at the door that everyone in the guild looked at each other, unable to make any other reaction for a long time. Around Magnolia, there were hills rising and falling one after another. On one of the hills, Raxas, who was wearing a fur-collared coat, had his eyes closed. His face was expressionless as if he was resting, but in fact, he was just waiting for someone. After an unknown amount of time, a figure quietly appeared in front of Laxas. Chapter 430. Who? A cold wind blew from top to bottom, causing Noah's and Laxas's coats to flutter, up and down. At that moment, Noah and Laxas's eyes met, revealing emotions that other brothers would never have. One was as cold as ice. The other was as violent as thunder. Two pairs of deep and ruthless eyes met in midair. It didn't cause any strange phenomenon, nor did it cause any strange sounds, but it caused the temperature in the air to drop to freezing point all of a sudden. In this regard, Laxas seemed to enjoy it. "Since you're here, it proves that you're willing to hand over the position of Fairy Tale, and the throne of the strongest magic shooter. Bet it all on this, right?" Laxas said with extreme joy. "Then, presumably, you should have already understood the rules, or do you need me to tell you the conditions and rules for winning, and even how to proceed?" This could basically be considered as a useless sentence. For Laxas, who only believed in strength, in this world, there was nothing more convincing than directly using strength to show results. Therefore, this so-called bet on the position of Fairy Tale, and the throne of the strongest magic shooter, how could there be a second method? Fight. Other than that, there was nothing else. You should feel honored. Noah raised his eyes, with a calm gaze like the suppression of a volcano before eruption, and met Laxas's eyes. "You've finally succeeded in angering me." After saying that, the air around Noah's body began to slightly reverberate, and a magic visible to the naked eye turned into a burning white flame, covering Noah's body and rolling up. At this moment, the air on the entire hill became chaotic, and the air pressure dropped again and again. An astonishing pressure diffused from Noah's body, shrouding the entire hill. That overwhelming and terrifying pressure made even someone as powerful as Raxas feel suffocated for a moment. He stared at Noah, who seemed to be burning with white flames all over his body as he mobilized his magic power. Instead of being shocked, he was delighted. "It's been almost 10 years, you're finally serious?" Laxas laughed wildly. "In the past 10 years, we've had dozens of conflicts, but you've never seriously tried to resist me, nor have you ever surrendered. When you have no power, you don't resist, you don't surrender. When you have power, you don't resist, you don't surrender. But the more you don't resist, the more you don't surrender, the more I won't accept it." Laxus fiercely tore off the fur collar on his body, and in a burst of crackling sound, his whole body was wrapped in violent thunder and lightning. The next moment, Laxus's roar resounded. "Why can't you understand me? Aren't we brothers?" Along with this voice, the violent thunder and lightning on Laxus's body rose. Beep beep beep. In a burst of chaotic sound, thunder and lightning as thick as an arm burst out from Laxus's body, like pythons, passed through Laxus's feet to the ground, and then fiercely spread. In an instant, the entire hill was filled with an indescribable, astonishing magical power. The space was filled with the magical power that resembled white flames burning on Noah's body and the magical power that resembled lightning bolts flashing on Laxus's body. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking apart, causing tremors bit by bit. Soon after, Laxus's crazed voice resounded powerfully from within the berserk thunder and lightning. "Between you and me, who is the real leader of Fairy Tale, and who is the strongest magic shooter in Fairy Tale, let's decide the winner and loser here." Looking at Laxus, who was bathed in violent thunder and lightning and crazily laughing, the anger in Noah's heart subsided bit by bit, leaving only a cold heart. "For that kind of thing that can't be seen and touched, you actually went to this extent. I underestimated the extent of your mental distortion and madness." Noah slightly closed his eyes, and after a moment, suddenly opened them. "Very well, let me tell you whether a guy like you has the qualifications to stand up and challenge the so-called strongest." Ha 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 ha. Laxus was still laughing wildly, but the thunder and lightning on his body suddenly rose sharply. In the sound of breaking air, Laxus's figure suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning, flashing through space, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Noah. He raised his fist, which was surrounded by thunder and lightning, and with a burst of noisy sound, fiercely punched towards Noah's direction. Thunder Dragon's bursting fist. Like a thunder hammer falling from the sky, Laxus's fist, which was surrounded by thunder and lightning, fell mercilessly, smashing towards Noah's head. At this moment, Noah also raised his fist at an unknown time, and the white light on his fist rose sharply, like a comet, meeting the attack head-on. Bang! The fist collided with the fist, stirring up a swift and fierce wind, which spread from the point of contact of the two fists, causing slight ripples to appear in the space. Ha 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 ha. After the first move failed, Laxus shook his other wrist, and his huge fist was like a heavy hammer, suddenly smashing towards Noah's chest. However, this time, Noah did not choose to meet force with Laxus, but instead, his body turned, and his leg was like a long whip, swinging out. Paw! Suddenly, the tip of Noah's foot hit Laxus's wrist, which was surrounded by thunder and lightning, very accurately. With a skillful force, Laxus's fist was deflected away. Laxus's eyes were sharp, and the magic in his body surged wildly. He clenched his fists, and directly carried heavy thunder and lightning, and like raindrops, suddenly enveloped Noah. Thunder Dragon's jaw. Accompanied by such a roar, the overwhelming thunder and lightning fist shadows filled the space in front of Laxus in a few breaths' time. Under Laxus's waving, it was like a torrential storm, pouring out in torrents and shooting out violently. The dazzling fist shadows filled Noah's entire vision. Although the countless fist shadows were illusory, the power they carried was not to be underestimated. If he were to casually receive them, even Noah would be at a disadvantage. Therefore, Laxus's ability was evident. It was indeed not something that ordinary S-rank magic shooters or even the 10 great saint magicians could compare to. However, Noah's heart did not waver in the slightest. His gaze was still calm as he looked at the thunder and lightning fist shadows that were shooting towards him. He raised one hand horizontally, as if he was waving a sword, and drew an arc, bringing along a blurry black shadow, lightly sweeping past. This attack did not seem to carry any power, but Laxus could faintly feel a wave of berserk magic power that was like a stormy sea, each wave stronger than the previous one. Paw 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 paw. Noah's arm drew a mysterious arc in an instant and collided with the countless fist shadows. In that instant, it actually gave rise to an unending burst of explosions. That was the sound of the seemingly thin arm directly smashing the fist shadows one after another. Noah waved his arms slowly with a kind of profound meaning, causing the fist shadows that were like raindrops that blotted out the sky and covered the earth to be engulfed and submerged as though they had encountered the rolling waves of the sea. Looking carefully, when Noah was waving his arm, a white light was faintly fluctuating on his arm. Superior grade destruction magic, crush. Laxus's complexion changed, but it quickly became fierce again. Beep beep beep. Dense lightning gathered in Laxus's hand and formed a thunder halberd. Thunder dragon halberd. Amidst the angry roar, the long halberd formed by thunder and lightning instantly broke away from Laxus's palm, and directly pierced towards Noah's chest. However, just as the long halberd formed by thunder and lightning appeared, a burst of gorgeous white light also burst out from Noah's body. In the next second, the thunder halberd that was mixed with a terrifying power fiercely shot forward. It did not have the slightest intention of retreating. Its entire body flashed with lightning, and the magic power within it quickly condensed. Without any hesitation, it heavily collided with that burst of white light. Pung! It was only a matter of a split second. An earth-shattering explosion sounded from the top of the hill, bringing forth a burst of white and golden light, illuminating the entire area. Chapter 431. Pung! Amidst the thunderous sound, the dense white light and golden light mixed with the violent wind and smoke rolled up the entire hill, as if something terrible had suddenly exploded. Puff! Under the attack of the violent wind, two figures retreated from the two ends of the smoke and dust. It was as if they were spat out, breaking through the area covered by the smoke and dust. After a while, Laxus's side landed on the ground. While the ground cracked, he struggled to stabilize his body. Noah's performance was much more relaxed than Laxus's. He landed very cleanly, stabilized his body, and didn't seem to be in a difficult situation. Slowly raising his head, Noah seemed to be able to see Laxus on the other side of the smoke. He clenched his fists and gently stepped forward. Pung! Accompanied by the sound of an explosion, a vortex of air that had gathered under Noah's feet directly exploded, turning into a pushing force, causing Noah's body to turn into a black line. In a flash, he directly penetrated the smoke that was still pervading the air, rushed out from the other end, and suddenly entered Laxus's field of vision. Laxus's face changed slightly, and the thunder and lightning all over his body quickly emerged. His body once again turned into a bolt of lightning, and quickly retreated. Almost at the moment when Laxus retreated, Noah's fist, which was condensed with the vortex of air, swung past Laxus's original position, bringing a gust of wind, and landed on the ground. Pung! Suddenly, under the amazing destructive power of the annihilation strike, the ground was directly smashed by Noah's fist, as if it was hit by a meteorite, and collapsed with a loud bang. However, without waiting for Laxus to catch his breath, Noah's feet exploded again. The pushing force generated by the leap technique caused his body to fiercely move forward. The fist that had just smashed on the ground was clenched again, and directly swung in the direction of Laxus. Bang! In the nick of time, Laxus raised his arm that was shrouded in lightning and blocked Noah's punch with his sturdy arm. But because of this, he lost his balance and his feet stomped on the ground. He retreated a dozen steps before stopping. You can actually catch up to me? Laxus felt his arm that blocked Noah's punch tremble slightly and become numb. There was a trace of shock in his eyes. Laxus had the ability to transform his body into lightning to move around. Laxus's speed was not comparable to Jalal's meteor, or even the speed of real lightning, but it was still hard for the naked eye to catch up with him. How could Laxus not be surprised that Noah was able to catch up to Laxus without using any spells or mana? But no matter how surprised Laxus was, the truth was the truth. After knocking back Laxus with a punch, Noah's mouth also showed a sneer. His footsteps that could cause small explosions repeatedly made Noah able to fly a distance like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, he once again caught up with Laxus. Both of his hands moved together, and his fists that were covered by the vortex of air pulled up shadows of fists. Like the waves of the sea, one after another, he fiercely bombarded Laxus. At this time, Noah used Annihilation Strike and Leap Forward at the same time. He also used these two skills in combination to make a series of attacks that were like a storm. In the face of Noah's sudden and fierce attack, Laxus also became a little embarrassed. But his fists that were shrouded in lightning were also constantly waving, bringing bursts of thunder, fiercely waving at Noah. Peng 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 peng. For a moment, on the hill, a stream of light and a streak of lightning constantly flashed and chased each other. It was so fast that ordinary people could only hear the sound of fists colliding with each other and the shockwaves from the impact. It was an amazingly fast close combat battle. Although the power of Noah's annihilation strike was astonishing, Laxus's Thunder Dragon's crushing fist was also a magic used to attack dragons. Its power was also not to be underestimated. This allowed Noah and Laxus's attack power to be on par. At the same time, Noah's leap forward could also increase his speed. He was able to catch up with Laxus's lightning transformation, and their speed was basically on par. In this way, the offensive and defensive battle between the two naturally entered a stalemate. However, this situation was somewhat unacceptable to Laxus. After all, Laxus had already taken out his signature, Dragon Slayer magic, but Noah still had not used his own magic. How could Laxus accept this? Of course, Laxus did not notice that Noah's hands and feet were faintly wrapped in a layer of electric wiring like magic lines. That was the enhancement magic. Using the enhancement magic to strengthen his arm and leg strength, in addition to the annihilation strike and leap forward, Noah was able to engage in such a fierce offensive and defensive battle with Laxus. Otherwise, facing Laxus, who was absolutely at the level of a 10th saint and using the Dragon Slayer magic that could be used to attack dragons, Noah would not be able to achieve a stalemate with just close combat. Laxus, who did not know this, thought that Noah could match him without even using magic. His emotions could not help but become a little irritable, leading to a slight flaw in his movements. Noah's eyes flashed, and very appropriately grasped this flaw. He raised his fist, and his arm was like a snake, strangely twisting, and suddenly appearing in front of Laxus. With a loud bang, it landed on his shoulder. Dong! Accompanied by a muffled sound, a strong force poured down on Laxus's shoulder like a flood, causing Laxus's body to tremble. He let out a muffled groan, and as if struck by lightning, he was sent flying. His body fell heavily on the ground, rubbing against the ground and drawing a line of more than 10 meters before slowly coming to a stop. For this attack, Noah also used the annihilation strike. If it was a normal person, after being hit by this punch, even if they did not die, they would be seriously injured. However, Noah did not think that this attack would have much effect on Laxus, who had used the Dragon Slayer magic, and had even transformed his body into that of a dragon. Therefore, after sending Laxus flying with a punch, Noah only slightly raised his head, glanced at Laxus, who was not far away on the ground, and said this indifferently. "That punch won't take your life. Stop pretending to be dead, get up." Laxus, who was lying on the ground, had an angry expression on his face. His eyes were filled with malevolence, and after spitting out a mouthful of saliva mixed with blood, he slowly stood up. As Noah predicted, even if the annihilation strike could bring some damage to Laxus, it would not be able to seriously injure Laxus. In fact, Noah also discovered that with the improvement of his strength, and the strengthening effect of the enhancement magic and the rune magic on his body, the effects of the annihilation strike and leap forward on his body were gradually decreasing. When Noah participated in high-level battles, the annihilation strike and leap forward basically had no effect other than increasing the strength of Noah's fists and feet. So, it won't be long before these two moves are eliminated by Noah, whose strength has improved again, right? But it was not strange. To be able to learn by secretly adding some improvements to the learned moves, it was only a matter of time before Noah's strength was eliminated. Thinking like this, Noah simply gave up on using them, and let the whirlpool of air around his fists and feet gradually dissipate. Laxus, who did not know the reason, saw Noah cancel the use of the skills. He thought that Noah was looking down on him, and was suddenly provoked. "Don't be too complacent. Little devil." Raising his head, Laxus revealed a pair of ferocious eyes like an injured beast, and let out a roar. Along with the soaring anger in his heart, Laxus's magic also rose several times, causing the thunder and lightning on Laxus's body to violently spread out, crazily flying around. You want to be merciful to me? You're not qualified. Clenching his fists tightly, Laxus squeezed out a roar from his throat like a dragon's roar. Beep beep beep. Suddenly, a violent thunder and lightning like thunder, crackling, rushed out of Laxus's body. Finally, as Laxus raised his fist, all the thunder and lightning gathered in Laxus's hand. Chapter 432. Beep, beep, beep. As more and more violent lightning gathered on Laxus's fist, a burst of terrifying magic power rose from Laxus's body. The strength of that magic power was something that even the 10 Saint Grand Magi couldn't match. Originally, Noah thought that Laxus was going to use Thunder Dragon's crushing fist, or Thunder Dragon's halberd, but seeing the strength of the magic power that Laxus was gathering, Noah immediately dispelled this idea. Laxus was definitely going to use some trump card. And this was indeed the case. Dragon-slaying mystery. In front of him, Laxus poured almost all of the magic power in his body into his fist, making his fist seem as if it was struck by a violent lightning that fell from the sky, and a huge lightning light that was 10 feet long burst out. At that moment, the whole hill seemed to tremble with a loud bang, and began to shake frequently. Immediately after, Laxus's foot landed on the ground, causing the ground to burst open. With a few steps, he appeared above Noah's head like a bolt of lightning, carrying a lightning that seemed to be able to destroy the heaven and earth, and his fist fiercely fell on Noah's head. Thunder-controlling cry. When that fist mixed with terrifying lightning fell, the air around Laxus's fist actually directly produced visible distortions, stirring up a burst of shock waves that fell on Noah's head. In the face of this attack that seemed to be able to destroy the heaven and earth, Noah's expression didn't change, but his eyes burst out with an astonishing expression. Is this your strongest magic? As if ignoring the lightning that fell from the sky, Noah fiercely raised his head, and met Laxus's pair of ferocious eyes due to rage. If that's the case, then let's end it here. After saying this, Noah's feet hurriedly retreated a few steps on the ground, and stretched out his finger. Like moving clouds and flowing water, he quickly waved it in the air in front of him, drawing a dazzling light tail formed by magic power. After a moment, a faintly discernible rune quickly formed and emerged following the trajectory of Noah's finger. Square root. When this rune that Noah had used several times appeared in the air, a burst of extremely turbulent shock waves suddenly spread out with Noah as the center. Under the direct impact of this shock wave, Laxus's body that was fiercely pouncing towards Noah suddenly stopped. Lightning crazily flashed all over his body, stubbornly withstanding the shock wave like the wind, and extremely barely withstanding the power of the shock wave. At this time, Noah actually directly stretched out his hand, and a dazzling white light burst out from his hand. Wherever it passed, whether it was the crazily flashing lightning or the substantial shock wave, all of them were like pieces of crumbling earth, shattering into pieces one by one. Immediately, Noah's hand quickly and violently grasped Laxus's fist that was enveloped by the 10 feet large lightning. Shatter. In the next second, following Noah's sudden low shout, the dazzling white light on his palm was like a dazzling sun, erupting at that moment. The light was so strong that it directly covered the crazily flashing lightning on Laxus's fist. Pung. Thus, without any surprise, under the full power of Noah's shatter, the crazily flashing lightning on Laxus's fist seemed to have turned into golden sparks in the midst of an explosion, and exploded. Wah! Laxus's fierce eyes finally showed an expression of shock. Although the superior grade destruction spell, Shatter, could not only shatter anything on a molecular level, it could even shatter magic, but that still depended on the situation. For example, even if a fledgling rookie magic shooter learned Shatter, could it be that he could completely shatter the magic of the 10 great saint magic shooters? That could not be said to be impossible, but in order to reach that level, there was a prerequisite. A large amount of magic. This was because, the larger the target that the shatter magic needed to shatter, the more magic it would require. This was because, the harder the target that the shatter magic needed to shatter, the more magic it would require. This was because, the harder the target that the shatter magic needed to shatter, the more magic it would require. This was because, the harder the target that the shatter magic needed to shatter, the more magic it would require. It was not that Laxus did not know how strong Noah's magic was, but he really did not expect that even after using the profound meaning of the Dragon Slayer magic, it would still be shattered in an instant. How could Laxus not be shocked by this? After shattering Laxus's Dragon Slayer magic, Noah's eyes sharpened. He glanced at the shocked Laxus in front of him, lifted his leg, turned around, and kicked at Laxus with a strong wind sound. Pung! Before Laxus could react in time, the fierce wind caused by the kick ferociously landed on his body. After being strengthened by the enhanced magic, the ferocious force brought about by the kick sent Laxus flying, crashing into a rock wall in the distance. Bastard brat! Feeling the pain from his own body, the fury in Laxus's heart finally erupted. He fiercely jumped up, and because of his agitation, his eyes could not even be seen, leaving only the whites of his eyes staring at Noah. I will definitely not forgive you. In addition to being a lightning magic shooter, Laxus also hid the Dragon Slayer magic, that even the members of the Fairy Tale Guild did not know about. Therefore, Laxus's most powerful magic was the Dragon Slayer magic, and his most powerful move was naturally the profound meaning of the Dragon Slayer magic. Now that his most powerful move was broken, it could be said that Laxus had very little chance of winning. However, did Laxus not have any magic that was stronger than the Dragon Slayer magic? The answer was, yes. Moreover, it was a magic that all the sorcerers in the Fairy Tale Guild, and even the sorcerers in the entire magic world, knew about. I want you to disappear from me. With such a roar, Laxus mobilized all the remaining magic in his body, and even surged out of his body, rioting. Ding! In the next moment, a light tinkling sound like a bell reverberated through the air. Streaks of resplendent light suddenly rose from the ground around Laxus and rushed into the sky. Seeing this scene, Noah's expression could not help but change. It was surprise. That magic, could it be? In Noah's bewildered voice, the brilliance that surrounded Laxus's body rushed into the sky, and an extremely gorgeous geometric pattern rotated and spread out, accompanied by the sound of a solemn movement, not knowing whether or not it was an illusion, and like the soaring brilliance, it filled the whole world. Laxus seemed to want to use his palms to wrap an invisible sphere, and put his hands in front of his body. Immediately, a resplendent ball of light that emitted boundless brilliance appeared in front of Laxus's hands, illuminating the surrounding space. Ha 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 ha. Laxus laughed wildly. This magic, you should be very familiar with it, right? Hearing this, Noah looked at Laxus, who was surrounded by brilliant brilliance, and held a gorgeous ball of light in his hands, and his expression gradually returned to normal. As long as it is the caster's inner thoughts, everything will be the target, the Crusade Super Trial Magic, Fairy Law. You actually know Fairy Law? This is also thanks to that old man, that I can master such a powerful magic. Laxus laughed loudly. Now, have a taste of this so-called Crusade magic. After saying this, a huge amount of magic rose from Laxus's body in an instant, and the brilliance of the resplendent ball of light in front of Laxus's hands became even more dazzling. In the next moment, Laxus closed his hands. Fairy Law. Activate. As soon as his voice fell, a magic circle that was almost identical to the gorgeous geometric pattern in the sky rapidly spread out from Laxus's closed palms, bringing with it a burst of extremely dazzling brilliance, and like a tide, it rushed in all directions. The speed of the brilliance's expansion was really too fast, and in an instant, it enveloped the entire hill, submerging Noah within. Chapter 433. Wang. When the dazzling light spread out in all directions like a tide, Noah did not even have the time to dodge. He was directly enveloped by the dazzling light. With Noah's ability, if he directly released the magician and let the magician combine into the death feather form, coupled with the numerous acceleration nuns engraved on the magician, it was not impossible for him to dodge the light in a short period of time. However, Noah did not choose to dodge in the end. Instead, he stood in the same place and let the light drown him. Fairy Law was a super magic that targeted everything the spellcaster deemed as an enemy, and it was able to subjugate everything. Once this super magic was activated, it would be an exaggeration to say that it could cover the entire Fiori kingdom. However, if it wanted to cover the whole of Magnolia in a short period of time, it would definitely not be a problem. Therefore, even if Noah could dodge for a moment, the Fairy Law would immediately catch up to him. Therefore, Noah simply did not dodge. Of course, this was not because Noah was looking for death. Wang. In the midst of the vibrations in the air, the gigantic magic circle that seemed to be able to cover the entire sky with the emblem of the fairy tale at its center was slowly rotating. With the outline of the magic circle as the source, a ray of light descended and covered the hill below. This dazzling radiance lasted for a very, very long time. It was only when the mana surging from the center of the radiance gradually weakened that the radiance began to dim little by little. After an unknown amount of time, the huge magic array in the sky slowly shrank as it rotated. Along with the resplendent light that filled the sky, it disappeared. Huff! Huff! On the hill, Laxus's arm that was hovering in the air weakly hung down. His whole body was panting violently, and even his eyes showed traces of fatigue and weakness. Although Fairy Law was very powerful, the amount of magic required to activate it was also abnormally high. Before this, Laxus even used Dragon Slayer mysteries. In this way, no matter how powerful Laxus was, his magic was almost exhausted. After all, Laxus was not Noah. It was impossible for him to have enough magic to rival the two. 7 billion magic that even if all the magic shooters in the world gathered together, they would not be able to gather. Naturally, there was no way for him to be like Noah after using a super magic and still not blushing or panting. Ha! Ha 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 ha! After a while, Laxus let out a few weak laughs that could not be concealed and gradually turned into laughter. How is it? Do you still want to go against me? Brother. Laxus did not notice that there was an indescribable emptiness in his laughter. Because Laxus was not as happy as he appeared on the surface and even felt extremely uncomfortable. However, even Raxus himself didn't notice the discomfort he was feeling. He could only use the maniacal laughter on the surface to hide his inner feelings. At this moment, a voice that sounded like a laugh yet not a laugh reverberated and drilled into Laxus's ears. You can't be thinking that the victor has already been decided, right? Laxus's laughter came to an abrupt end. His eyes widened as he turned his head abruptly and looked in front of him. In the next second, Noah's figure slowly appeared amidst a cloud of dust and entered Laxus's field of vision. Impossible. Laxus could not help but take a step back and exclaim in shock. You. Why, Fairy Tale, was one of the 3 great spells. It was a super spell created by the first president of the Fairy Tale, Mavis, Fairy Law. After being hit squarely by that super magic that could suppress everything, Noah not only looked unharmed on the surface, but he was also completely fine. How is this possible? Indeed, this was something that should be impossible. If the Fairy Law did not activate, it would be fine. However, once it was activated and hit the opponent, no matter how powerful Noah's magic was, if he was hit, he would definitely lose in an instant. That was a super magic that suppressed the enemy's spirit. Once it was hit, there was no way to defend against it. However, that would only work if the Fairy Law really hit Noah. Therefore, not long after, Laxus noticed something. Unknowingly, a pair of palms appeared in the air. The palms of Noah, who was in front of him, were constantly fluctuating with a resplendent ball of light. Suddenly, Laxus's pupils shrank. Fairy Law? That's right. Noah stopped pouring magic into the resplendent ball of light in his hands, allowing the Fairy Law to dissipate in his hands. He retracted his hands and looked at Laxus's pupils that shrank. I used the Fairy Law to cancel out your Fairy Law. Laxus, did you think that you were the only one who knew the Fairy Law? You used the Fairy Law to cancel out the Fairy Law? Laxus was completely stunned. It was only then that Raxus recalled what had happened. In these 2 years, Noah had gone to Sky Wolf Island to receive the teachings of the first chairman of the fairy tale. Then, not to mention the fairy law, it would not be strange for Noah to have mastered all 3 of the fairy tale spells. But, does the fairy law have such a defensive method? You are really naive, Laxus. Seeing Laxus's stunned look, Noah sighed. Since I know how to use the fairy law, and also know how to activate the fairy law, and the principles of the fairy law, then why can't I use the same fairy law to cancel out your fairy law? Just like 2 people in a battle, if one of them already knew the moves the other was using, then, would it be difficult to break it? The so-called know thyself and know thy enemy to win 100 battles could also be used in this situation. Damn it. Laxus finally reacted and gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to do something, his body suddenly seemed to have lost its strength and became soft, causing Laxus to kneel on the ground. Seeing this, Noah directly cast his gaze on Laxus. Your magic has been exhausted, there is no way for you to continue fighting. Laxus, you have lost this battle. I lost? Laxus's eyes violently fluctuated, looking at his trembling hands, he asked in disbelief. I lost? You lost. Noah lightly replied. It's over, Laxus. This sentence seemed to have stimulated Laxus, causing Laxus to roar with extreme excitement. No. It's impossible for me to lose. Looking at the crazy Laxus, Noah's face was still calm as he said this sentence word by word. Why are you not willing to give up? Why are you so persistent? Because of the position of the guild leader? Because of the throne of the strongest? I'm afraid not, right? Laxus glared at Noah. However, Noah turned a blind eye and directly said Laxus's deepest thoughts. Laxus, you don't want the position of the guild leader, nor do you want to become the strongest magic shooter, nor do you really want Fairy Tale to become the so-called strongest guild and eliminate all the weaklings in the guild. Noah's voice deeply pierced Laxus's heart. You just want to be recognized by others. Laxus's whole body trembled, even his lips trembled as he stared blankly at Noah. After a while, Laxus seemed to have completely lost his strength and fell back on the ground, his eyes looking at the sky lost focus. Chapter 434. The battle was over. When Laxus chose to lie down, Noah knew that the battle was really over. He became silent and sighed faintly in his heart. From a young age, Noah was picked up by Makarov in an unknown forest. He was adopted as a grandson and lived in Makarov's house. If Makarov was the first person that Noah knew when he was born, then as Makarov's grandson, Laxus was the second person that Noah knew in his life. Noah still remembered that when Makarov called him home and introduced him to Laxus, Laxus looked at him with a complicated expression. Joy? A little, right? Disgust? A little, right? But Noah could only remember that at that time, Laxus looked at him with a hint of sympathy, as if he was looking at someone of the same kind. That's right. Someone of the same kind. Because, from that moment on, Noah and Laxus had the same identity. The identity of Makarov's grandson. Why did Laxus become this mentally twisted child who could not grow up? It was because of the identity of Makarov's grandson. As one of the most famous 10 great magicians in the magic world, and also the leader of the Fiori Kingdom's #1 guild, Makarov's reputation was resounding. This caused Laxus to bear the identity of Makarov's grandson since young. No matter what he did, people would only say, as expected of Makarov's grandson, and never say, as expected of Laxus's grandson. For Laxus, the identity of Makarov's grandson was too heavy. After all, no matter how outstanding Laxus's achievements were, people would take it for granted because of this identity. And if he did something wrong, then it would be a disgrace to Makarov and Fairy Tale. How could Laxus not feel pressured? Because as Makarov's grandson, he had always been looked at with prejudice and could not receive a true evaluation. In addition, Laxus's father had done some shady things that damaged the reputation of Fairy Tale, and was expelled from the guild by Makarov. Using this as an opportunity, he wanted to find his true self and receive a fair evaluation from others. This was why Laxus's personality changed so much. Just like what Noah said, Laxus was not really coveting the position of the guild leader of Fairy Tale, nor was it because of the title of the strongest that caused him to act so excessively, but because he wanted to gain the recognition of others. This was the real Laxus. Noah could understand Laxus. Although it was not as serious as Laxus's, Noah had been looked at differently by others for a period of time because of his identity as Makarov's grandson. In fact, Noah, who could not rashly learn magic because he had too much mana and could not control it, was secretly mocked by many people because he did not even know how to use magic as Makarov's grandson. Since then, Noah had been judged by others because of various things. It was not until he left Fairy Tale and chose to train outside for 4 years, and then traveled in another world for 2 years that this phenomenon began to disappear. Noah felt that if he was like Laxus, who was watched by others from a young age and endured extraordinary pressure, then maybe he really could become like Laxus. It was because he clearly knew what kind of eyes he would receive if he became Makarov's grandson that Laxus looked at Noah as if he was the same kind of person. After that, because the relationship between Makarov and Laxus was not good, and they quarreled every 2 to 3 days, Noah could not stand that kind of atmosphere, so he moved out of Makarov's house and lived in the guild. However, even though they did not live together for long, living under the same roof made Noah the person who could understand Laxus the most. Unfortunately, understanding was one thing, but Noah could not agree with Laxus. Because Laxus's methods and changes were undoubtedly developing in the wrong direction. With this thought in mind, Noah moved and came before Laxus. He looked at Laxus, who was lying on the ground and looking at the sky with unfocused eyes. His entire body was exuding an aura of decadence. Noah suddenly spoke. Because we are the grandchildren of the 10 great Saint Magus, we have always been looked at with colored glasses. So, if you want to get rid of it, don't you think that directly defeating a 10 great Saint Magus would be a very good way? Laxus's eyes that had lost focus suddenly focused rapidly and gradually brightened. We did what Grandpa could do. That's why others would say, as expected of Makarov's grandson. But if we did something that even Grandpa couldn't do, then others wouldn't be able to use it as an excuse, Noah muttered to himself, intentionally or unintentionally. As long as you remember not to take the wrong path, then no matter what, surpassing our predecessors is something that only we, the descendants, can do. Don't you think so? After saying that, Noah no longer paid attention to Laxus, whose eyes were getting brighter and brighter, and turned his back to him. At that moment, a voice sounded from afar. Noah, brother Noah. Following that call, a few figures ran over from afar. They were none other than Mira, Lisanna, and Elusha. Seeing Mira and Lisanna, Noah couldn't help but reveal a trace of joy. He took a step forward and directly hugged Lisanna, who had rushed over, into his embrace. Feeling the familiar softness in his arms, he then looked at Mira, who was slowly coming to a stop, and couldn't help but size her up. We're fine. As if she could read Noah's thoughts, Mira smiled gently. It was Elusha who found us, Angelina said. I think that Thor Council shouldn't be too far away from Laxus, so when you were fighting Laxus, I secretly snuck around and found them in the depths of the forest. Elusha nodded at Noah. Luckily, Thor Council didn't make things difficult for Mira and Lisanna. It was just as I thought. After all, we're all in the same guild. Thor Council just kept an eye on Mira and Lisanna, so I saved them first. Hearing this, Noah breathed a sigh of relief. Although Noah also felt that Laxus shouldn't be so crazy as to do anything to his companions, Mira and Lisanna were still Noah's fiancées, after all, and Noah couldn't help but feel nervous. Now, he could finally rest assured. Elusha is really amazing. Lisanna, who raised her head from Noah's embrace, exclaimed in amazement. Even the entire Thor Council couldn't do anything to Elusha. Although I knew that Elusha was powerful before, I didn't think that she would be this powerful. Hearing this, Elusha and Mira looked at each other and smiled, not saying anything. Even Noah just smiled and didn't say anything. Noah knew that it wasn't something to be surprised about. Although Fried, Bixro, Alba, and Gerlin were strong, they were only at the level of Naz and Gray. The strongest, Fried, probably surpassed them by a little, but he wasn't at the level of an S-rank Magus. If the three of them were to face an S-rank Magus at the same time, they should have a chance of winning. But was Alusha an ordinary S-rank Magus? To put it bluntly, Alusha could no longer be considered an S-rank Magus. In Noah's opinion, the current Alusha definitely had the strength that Jalal had when he hadn't retrieved Seek. At that time, Jalal had been evaluated by Noah to be extremely close to being one of the 10 great Saint Magi. Alusha was naturally the same. Alusha wasn't far from being one of the 10 great Saint Magi. If someone were to give the counselors some leeway, Alusha would definitely be able to get the title of one of the 10 great Saint Magi like Seek. For Alusha, who wasn't far from being one of the 10 great Saint Magi, it wouldn't be difficult for her to deal with 3 Magi who weren't even S-rank. At this thought, Noah immediately thought of his other companions in the guild. He turned his head and looked at Laxus, who was still lying on the ground. Right, where are the other companions in the guild? Raxus frowned and said such a sentence. I didn't capture those people. Chapter 435. You weren't the one who caught them? When Laxus's words reached the ears of Noah, Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha, the atmosphere changed completely. Alusha, in particular, stepped forward and questioned Laxus, who was lying on the ground due to the exhaustion of his mana. You're still planning to hide it at this point? Don't tell me you guys think that I'm the reason why everyone else in the guild went missing just because I asked Thor clan to find the sisters? Laxus seemed to have shaken off his dejected state of mind. He used his usual arrogant attitude, but there was no sense of tit-for-tat in his tone as he weakly said this. I asked the sisters to come here because I wanted to make a clean break with Noah. If I didn't do that, because of that old man, he probably wouldn't be serious with me. That's all. He didn't do anything else. Laxus glanced at Alusha. I'll say it again. I wasn't the one who caught them. Upon hearing that, Noah and the others immediately looked at each other, and they were at a loss for a moment. After learning that Raxus had ordered Thor's council to take Mira and Lisanna away, everyone, including Noah, believed that the disappearance of their guild members in the past 2 days was also Raxus's doing. After all, Laxus had always shown a certain degree of disgust towards his guild members who weren't up to his standards. Sometimes, he would even brazenly say that he wanted them to disappear. If it weren't for this attitude, why would Noah suspect that Laxus was involved in this matter? Because of this and the fact that Laxus had Laxus take Mira and Lisanna away, everyone thought that Laxus had the idea of usurping the position of president because Noah had taken it away from him. That was why he had captured everyone in the guild by hook or by crook. Otherwise, Makarov wouldn't have been so furious. But now, Laxus said that he didn't do anything to their missing guild members. This stunned everyone. Alusha seemed to want to say something, but she was stopped by Noah. Since Laxus said that he didn't do it, then it definitely wasn't him, Noah asserted. Although it's more or less extreme, this man isn't the kind of person who won't admit what he did. Alusha, you should understand. Alusha was speechless. Indeed. With Laxus's personality, if he really did something, he would either admit it or ignore the questioning of others. If he gave a certain answer, then it definitely wouldn't be wrong. So, if Laxus really did kidnap everyone in the guild, then with his personality, even if he was questioned by Alusha, he would still admit it. And if Laxus didn't want to admit it, then he wouldn't choose to lie. Most likely, he would give an ambiguous answer, such as who knows. But Lisanna, who was still in Noah's arms, tightened her grip on Noah's waist uneasily. If it wasn't Laxus, then who could have kidnapped everyone in the guild? This was exactly what everyone wanted to know. Noah, who was hugging her, patted her back in an attempt to dispel the uneasiness in her heart. At the same time, he thought of something. There was a trace of extremely strange and dark magic left in Lucy's room. Thinking about it carefully, at that time, Noah had also noticed this trace of magic and denied the possibility of Laxus being the culprit. Later on, when Mira and Lisanna were kidnapped, everyone in the guild believed that Laxus was the culprit. At that time, Noah had neglected this matter because of his two fiancées. Now that he thought about it, this matter was indeed contradictory. No matter what, let's go back to the guild first. Mira said as if to disperse the heavy feeling in the air. We have to inform the president about this matter first. Everyone came to their senses and nodded in agreement. But at that moment, a weak voice sounded from not far away. R.A.C. Sass, with such a weak and powerless voice, and even a trace of pain, a figure staggered from not far away with great difficulty. Not long after, his legs gave way and he fell to the ground. Laxus, who was also lying on the ground, narrowed his eyes. Freed. Freed. Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha cried out in shock. Even Noah furrowed his brows, his expression darkening bit by bit. The reason for that was because Freed, who had fallen to the ground, was covered in injuries. Furthermore, they appeared to be quite serious. Alusha. Laxus turned his furious gaze towards Alusha. Of course. In order to save Mira and Lisanna, Alusha had publicly admitted that she had defeated all three members of Raiden. Thus, it was not strange that Laxus suspected that Alusha was the cause of Freed's injuries. However, Alusha was also rather shocked. No, I only knocked them out. I didn't hit them so hard. As she said that, a vexed expression appeared on Alusha's face. It seemed that even if it wasn't Alusha who had done it, given Alusha's upright personality, she would have probably blamed herself for Freed's injuries. Noah and the rest immediately moved towards Freed. Even Laxus, who was lying on the ground due to exhaustion, struggled to get up and went to Freed's side. Freed. Laxus. Freed, who was being carried up by Laxus, had a pained expression on his face. He couldn't even speak clearly. It seemed that he had suffered rather serious injuries. Freed. Laxus shouted angrily. What the hell is going on? Weren't all of you defeated by Alusha? After that, someone attacked us. Freed spat out those words with great difficulty. Bikesrow. Iba, they were all taken away. To cover my escape, someone attacked you? Laxus's face was filled with shock and anger. It's those guys, right? Alusha clenched her fists and said angrily. They're the ones who captured our companions in the guild. Not just our companions, but even Thor's castle was attacked. Mira and Lisanna were both bewildered. Noah crouched down and said as he looked at Freed's dirty face. Do you know who the attackers are? I'm not sure. Freed's hands trembled as he took out a totem-like wooden doll with only a head. You have to be careful. Having said that, Freed's head tilted to the side and he fainted as though he had completed his mission. Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and Laxus were all shocked when they saw that. Don't worry, he's just fainted. Noah's sharp senses detected that Freed was still breathing. After a quick check, he came to this conclusion and picked up the doll in Freed's hand. What's this? That's a doll Bikesrow uses to control, Laxus said with an ugly expression. Bikesrow's magic can control souls, so there should be a soul inside. That means... Lisanna said with some uncertainty. If we let it lead the way, we might be able to find Bikesrow. If we use it well, we might even be able to find the attacker's lair. Noah gripped the wooden doll tightly and stood up, looking at everyone around him. Take Laxus and Freed back to the guild for treatment and report this to grandfather. Do you want to go alone? Mira asked worriedly. It's too dangerous alone. I'll go with you. Alusha stood up without any explanation. No. Noah shook his head without hesitation. The guild might continue to be attacked. Although grandfather is here, Laxus can't fight and Mishgang isn't here. How can the guild not have an S-rank archmage guarding it? Looking at the worried expressions on the girls' faces, Noah had no choice but to give them some advice. I have BO. Even if something happens, I can escape. If you come with me, it'll be difficult for me to move. They couldn't find a reason to refute him and could only reluctantly agree. Chapter 436. By allowing the souls to attach themselves to the puppets, they would be able to control the puppets that were possessed by the souls to fight. This was Bikesro's spell, Star Map Magic. Noah did not know if the soul attached to the puppet by Picasso's Star Atlas magic was his own or someone else's. Perhaps it was stolen from some creature or even created out of thin air with magic, but the soul attached to the puppet seemed to be able to sense the direction of its master. Noah also didn't know if Bikesro was controlling the puppets from a distance or if the soul in the puppets had an instinct to find its master. In short, after Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha left with Laxus and Freed, Noah let go of the puppet in his hand. The puppet seemed to have a life of its own as it floated into the air. The pair of eyes of the puppet that could only be used for decoration suddenly lit up and made a mechanical sound. After hovering in the air for a while, it suddenly flew in a certain direction. Hum. At the same time, the space behind Noah suddenly shook. Accompanied by the sound of vibrations in the air, a surge of blue flames suddenly ignited and covered Noah's back. It transformed into a magician who had released his death feather form and spewed out a large amount of black light. With this push, Noah flew into the sky and followed behind the puppet. Under the puppet's lead, he flew in a certain direction. Beep. 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 With this kind of mimicry, the doll was like a real robot. It spun and flew forward. Noah, who was following behind the puppet, stared at the puppet while observing the surroundings. He found that he was moving towards another of the hills around Magnolia. It seems that the enemy chose this hill as well, just like Raxus. Seeing the puppet that was flying forward suddenly dive down for no reason and land on one of the endless hills below, Noah came to this conclusion. Although he didn't know if he could find Naz, Gray, Lucy, and the others, he was certain that Bikesro was now on this hill. After Alusha defeated Raytheon, Raytheon was attacked. Although Freed had arrived at Noah and Rax's location with great difficulty despite being seriously injured, judging from the fact that the attackers couldn't catch up to Freed, it shouldn't have been too long even if Bikesro and Epigran risked their lives to protect him. That was why Noah originally thought that the enemy couldn't move far, but now it seemed that he was just lucky. In this world where even magic was used in daily life, nothing was impossible. Noah once again understood this fact. However, even so, the attacker didn't seem to be far away. At least, Bikesro's position wasn't far away. Thus, under the lead of the wooden puppet, Noah descended to the bottom of the hill. Whoosh! At this moment, a sharp sound broke through the air. Noah stopped abruptly and retreated in an instant. The floating cannons around him were suddenly aimed at Urusha. I have to say, you're quite brave, Urusha. As soon as he finished speaking, the familiar energy turned into light and condensed at the front of the floating cannons. Sir, it's better if you don't act rashly. Facing the floating cannons that could shoot laser beams, Urusha, who had just witnessed the power of the laser beam, calmly raised the crystal ball. Otherwise, something that you'll regret will happen later. With such a sentence, the crystal ball in Urusha's hand lit up, and figures suddenly appeared around her. The energy gathered at the front of the floating cannons suddenly condensed, and a fierce light flashed in Noah's eyes. It was because the figures that suddenly appeared were all the companions of the fairy tale that Noah was looking for. At this moment, all the fairy tale sorcerers, including Bikeslo, Abba, and Jerlin, had fallen on the ground as if they had lost consciousness. Even Naz, Gray, Lucy, and even Hobby were there. Seeing this scene, Noah first confirmed the number of people. After confirming that all the missing people were present, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. His cold gaze was cast on Urusha, and there was a real murderous intent in his eyes. As expected of the person who has been pretending to be a ghost for the past 8 years. I should have known that you would be the one who would do such a sneaky thing. You've wronged me this time. Despite saying so, Urusha still had a sweet smile on her face. To capture so many people, it would be very difficult for me to do it alone in less than 2 days. I wasn't the one who did it. I only offered up this plan when that lord asked if there was any way to lure you out. That lord? Noah couldn't help but be startled. Then, his expression suddenly changed, and he abruptly raised his head to look at the sky. There, a huge floating magic airship was slowly descending as if it had stopped on a huge magic array. At this moment, a whip shadow suddenly descended from the magic airship like a meteor falling from the sky. Amidst the sound of breaking air, it fell on Noah's body. Chapter 437. Amidst such a sharp sound, the whip shadow that descended from the magic airship hovering in the sky was as fast as lightning. The moment Noah raised his head, the whip shadow suddenly fell in a strange arc like a venomous snake. It was so fast that it was comparable to a bullet. Noah's attention was attracted by Urrutia and his companions in the fairy tale guild. Although he used his sensing ability to detect the magic airship and the snake-like whip shadow falling from the sky in time, it was still a little hasty. Moreover, the whip shadow's speed was too fast. Noah could only desperately urge the death feather form of the magician. Bang! A large amount of black light gushed out from the tip of the pitch-black wings like a flood and turned into a violent thrust, causing Noah's body to suddenly move a step to the side. This step allowed Noah to avoid the whip shadow that was about to strike him, and it was about to land on his head. However, after Noah moved a step to the side, the snake-like whip shadow fell in the position where Noah was a second ago. It did not directly hit Noah, but it still wrapped around one of Noah's arms. Only then did Noah clearly see what the whip shadow was. It was actually a chain completely composed of magic power. Pa! In the next moment, the magic power chain wrapped around Noah's arms suddenly tightened with a crisp sound. It stretched perfectly straight and rapidly retracted in its original direction. Noah only felt that the magic power chain wrapped around his arms suddenly exerted a force and pulled him over. Suddenly, the magic power chain forcibly pulled Noah in the direction of the magic airship. Whoosh! While his body was being pulled upwards, Noah heard a sharp sound of wind in his ears, telling him how fast he was flying upwards. In the blink of an eye, the magic power chain pulled Noah past the magic airship's position. Like flying a kite, the other end of the chain seemed to be fixed on the airship and threw Noah into the air. Noah's heart trembled and his expression turned cold. The magic power in his body flowed like a stream toward Noah's arm, turning into a gorgeous white light that covered the magic power chain. Bang! With a muffled sound, the magic power chain suddenly exploded, allowing Noah's body to regain its freedom. He controlled the death feather on his back to spray out a large amount of black light, propelling his body. With a rotation, he shot forward instead of retreating, shooting in the direction of the magic airship, and landed on the top of the airship. What was the feeling of standing on an airplane? Noah had never tried it before, so he didn't know what it was like. However, in the world of the Dark Bullet, in order to destroy Scorpio, Noah had also stood on the top of a military helicopter. That feeling was probably similar to what he was feeling now, right? Against the strong wind, Noah stood on the top of the magic airship and slowly raised his head to look in front of him. In the direction of Noah's gaze, there was a person. A tall figure, wearing demon-like armor, a helmet on his head, and a cape on his back. His white beard reached below his chest, and one of his eyes was covered with a black eye patch. His gaze was very fierce, and he looked to be at least 70 or 80 years old. Although he appeared to be an old man in his 70s or 80s, his back was extremely straight. One of his hands was extended forward, and a magic array rotated in front of his palm. This magic array was connected to a chain of mana, and the chain was slowly retracting. Obviously, the person who suddenly attacked Noah was this person in front of him. Oh. The old man wearing the demon-like double-horned helmet retracted the chain while looking at Noah in surprise. You actually managed to shatter my magic. You seem to possess a rather interesting magic, brat. Noah stared at the calm old man in front of him. His eyes gradually flickered, and there was a faint trace of seriousness. From this old man, Noah felt a familiar magic power. Strange, evil magic power. It was exactly the same as the magic power in Lucy's room. No. Under Noah's excellent perception ability, the magic power that pervaded from this person was much stronger than the magic residue left in Lucy's room. It was also much more evil and dark. This old man is not simple. Although the situation just now was indeed quite rushed, and there was suspicion of a sneak attack in it, but Noah could still let the magic power chain catch Noah's arm with his superb perception ability, which was enough to prove that this old man was not simple. Noah's intuition told him. The old man in front of him was very strong. Stronger than Makarov, Laxas, Kildas, Joseph, and Jalal. And a lot stronger. If he did not raise his vigilance, once the battle started, even Noah was afraid that if he was not careful, he would fall. Under such intuition, Noah's body tensed up for the first time since the last battle with Bio. His gaze fell on the old man like an arrow. "Who are you?" Hearing this sentence, the old man laughed. His laughter was unusually creepy. It really makes people sigh at the mercilessness of time. I didn't expect that there would be a time when I would be asked about my identity by the people of Fairy Tale. Hearing this, Noah frowned. What did this sentence mean? Could it be that the members of Fairy Tale had to know him? "You can call me Hades." The old man who called himself Hades looked at Noah and introduced himself. "The leader of the Dark Guild, Grimoire Heart, Hades." Dark Guild, Grimoire Heart? Noah was surprised. Baram Alliance's Grimoire Heart? Baram Alliance. In the dark of the magic world, it could be said to be an alliance formed by the three strongest dark guilds that controlled the entire dark world. One of them was Grimoire Heart. Moreover, Grimoire Heart was said to be the strongest among the three dark guilds in the Baram Alliance. In other words, the person who called himself Hades standing in front of Noah was the leader of the strongest dark guild in the magic world. That Grimoire Heart actually came to Magnolia and even captured the people of Fairy Tale? After understanding what kind of enemy he was facing, Noah became more dignified. He didn't expect that the disbandment of the council would allow this number one dark guild to be so brazen as to move around a big city with people. I heard from Urrutia that there's a very impressive brat in Fairy Tale. Coincidentally, the council has been disbanded recently, so I have less to worry about. That's why I came here personally to take a look. Hades was still sizing up Noah as he exclaimed in admiration. What an amazing magic power. Just from magic power alone, you are more outstanding than anyone I have ever seen in my life. I even doubted if the legendary Dark Mage Jerf had magic power at your level. I originally thought that there was no need to use such a troublesome method to lure you out. I even thought that I might as well kill my way into Magnolia. But now, it seems that you have the qualifications to make me waste my effort. Lure me out? Noah looked straight at Hades and slightly moved his palms, as if he was ready to clench his fist at any time. In other words, you kidnapped my companions one by one, and your target was me? After all, you came from that important guild. Even Urrutia especially reported it to me, so I was more or less concerned. Since the council was disbanded, I came to take a look. It seems that this trip was worth it. Hades said this sentence as if it was a matter of fact. Hey, little devil, do you want to join my guild and explore the truth of the path of demons with me? Hades actually had the heart to cherish talent. However, Noah slightly raised his eyes and sneered. Recruit? You actually want to recruit me after touching my family and companions? Violent magic power rose from Noah's body. Dream on. Chapter 438. It was as though the surrounding space had suddenly vibrated. The violent mana that caused the atmosphere to shriek was like monstrous waves that surged from Noah's relatively small body. It turned into a substantial impact that shook the surroundings like a storm. If someone were to look at the magic airship hovering in mid-air from the ground, they would see it. At this moment, at the top of the magic airship, a whirlpool-like wind was expanding in all directions with terrifying power, causing the magic airship to shake and almost lose its balance. Feeling the boundless and terrifying mana coming from Noah, Hades was secretly shocked. As the leader of the strongest dark guild, Grimoire Heart, Hades, who had a lot of encounters in the past, had long seen all kinds of strange things in the magic world. Originally, Hades thought that apart from the legendary Jerv, there shouldn't be anything in this world that could surprise him. But now, a brat who wasn't even 20 years old had made Hades break his self-awareness in less than 3 minutes after meeting him. Not only was Hades not angry, but he was also pleasantly surprised. The potential you have is much more terrifying than I imagined. If you were given time to grow, I wouldn't doubt that you could become the second Jerv. You've really opened my eyes. Saying that, Hades' face suddenly turned sullen. But when I think of how such a person is still a fairy tale, my rebellious heart cries. As soon as he finished speaking, Hades' eyes suddenly became extremely fierce. He glanced at Noah and stretched out his hand. A magic array suddenly fluctuated in front of his palm. It rotated slightly, and at the center of it, a chain made of rhombus-shaped magic light sheets suddenly shot out. The chain turned into a black shadow and shot toward Noah from the front. The clanging sound of the chain colliding was like the sound of a death knell, and it swept toward Noah as if it was seeking his life. Its speed was as fast as before. Even the 10 great saint magicians might not be able to react in time. However, this time, Noah, who was on guard, saw the magic chain suddenly shoot toward him. The black light behind him suddenly expanded. His body trembled, and the soles of his feet left the ground. He strangely retreated backward without using any strength, leaving behind illusory afterimages that constantly flashed. The chain swept past, but it didn't hit Noah. Instead, it only hit the afterimage left by Noah. Oh. Seeing that the chain attack was dodged by Noah, Hades raised his brows and sneered. He waved his hand, and the chain that missed its target suddenly raised its head like a venomous snake and chased after Noah at lightning speed. Noah's figure rapidly retreated under the propulsion of the death feathers. His body drew a dancing trajectory, and every time he was able to narrowly avoid the chain attack. At the same time, a ball of green flame burst out from Noah's hand. The pitch-black knight's sword emerged from the green flame and fell into Noah's hand. To deal with Hades, Noah actually used his full strength. Just from the fact that Hades was able to make Noah feel a sense of danger, just like Bio, Noah knew that this Hades was definitely not an ordinary person's strength. If he didn't use his full strength, Noah definitely wouldn't be able to contend against him. As a result, under the effect of the knight's sword, to shorten the distance and the feather of death, to increase the speed of the feather of death, the magic chain that Hades continued to chase could only continuously sweep past the afterimages left behind by Noah, failing to achieve any results. This caused Hades' originally somewhat relaxed old face to gradually tighten. His brows also slowly creased. Hades didn't expect that Noah actually had this kind of ability, to be able to freely dodge his attacks. It must be known that even if it was an ordinary 10 Saint Grand Magus, or even a powerhouse at the level of Makarov, Hades was confident that he could rely on this move to make the other party endlessly embarrassed and unable to dodge in the end. I still underestimated you. As expected of the Archmage who was able to kill Joseph and defeat Jalal. I still thought that you were at most at the level of Makarov. It seems that if I don't use some of my true ability, I really might not be able to take you down. Leaving these words, Hades even stretched out his other hand. Just like his other hand, a magic array fluctuated in front of his palm. A pitch-black, fog-like magic power curled around it. Soon after, in the midst of a clattering sound, another magic chain suddenly shot out from the magic array. It coiled around in the air like a huge net, covering the sky and covering the earth as it moved towards the dodging Noah. Ha 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 ha. I'm dancing with magic. In the midst of Hades' joyful laughter, the 2 chains encircled Noah from the top and the bottom, one from the front and one from the back. It was almost like an inescapable net, sealing off all of Noah's escape routes. In this way, Noah had no choice but to resist it head-on. At that moment, Noah stopped his futile dodging, and looked at the magic chain that was rapidly enlarging in his eyes. Under the gaze of Hades, he actually closed his eyes. The magic chain arrived in an instant. The two magic chains, one from the front and one from the back, connected to each other like snakes biting the head and tail, forming a ring. Like a meat grinder, they suddenly shrank towards the surrounded Noah. However, at the moment when the chains encircling from all directions were about to land on Noah's body, Noah suddenly opened his eyes. On the body of the knight's sword that was in Noah's hand, the rows of mysterious runes lit up under the infusion of magic power. Harden. Sharp. Accelerate. At this moment, all of the runes engraved on the knight's sword played their role. In addition to the knight's sword's ability to control the distance, reducing the sword's slashing distance to the limit, increasing the sword's speed by 100 times, and increasing the force of impact by 10,000 times. Noah's knight's sword had turned into a true killing machine. Clang. Thus, in the clear sound of the sword, the space in front of Noah began to distort. Following the distortion of space, a ray of sword light flashed out in an extremely perfect trajectory. Clang. Suddenly, the ray of sword light and the chain collided, causing a violent shockwave, bursting out bursts of sparks and crisp sounds. Pung. Under that terrifying sword strike, Hades' snake-like chain seemed to have been hit by something heavy, and in the midst of an explosion, it was directly scattered. Not only magic power, but even sword skills are so outstanding. Hades' pupils shrank. You little brat, where did this freak come from? So you don't know? When you mentioned fairy tale, didn't you sound very high and mighty? Don't tell me even I don't know. Holding the knight's sword, Noah sneered. I am Makarov's grandson. You are Makarov's grandson? Hades was really surprised, and then he muttered to himself. Now that you mention it, a few years ago I heard that Makarov had a grandson, but then he disappeared without a trace. Could it be that you are that person? Who knows? Noah pointed the knight's sword at Hades. I only need to know that you are the enemy of fairy tale, that's enough. Little brats these days are all so arrogant, it seems that the brats in Makarov's guild are all very lively. Hades said this, but his eyes turned cold. That's good, the battle with you brat can't be delayed any longer. Otherwise, even if the council has been disbanded, the brazen actions of Devil's Heart will attract those annoying official guilds, and even attract the attention of the kingdom. Saying this, Hades' body rose with a black mist-like magic power, and his fierce eyes were like a beast staring at its prey, showing an ominous glint. I'll let you see the true form of my magic. As the black mist-like magic power rose from Hades' body, a dense and heavy pressure filled the magic airship. Noah's heart suddenly tightened. He felt it. The moment Hades became serious, in a corner of the airship, a strange wave spread out. At the same time, Hades' magic power and strength rose crazily, reaching a level that even Noah couldn't help but be surprised. Chapter 439. The black mist-like magic power that lingered around Hades became denser with the passage of time. Every time it became denser, Hades' aura would also become more vigorous. Under such circumstances, the magic power on Hades' body continued to rise. The magic power permeated the air in the form of black mist, causing Hades' aura to become more and more powerful. Noah's outstanding sensing ability made him realize the terror of Hades at this moment. If it was said that before, Noah still had doubts about whether he needed to use his full strength to fight, now, these doubts had all disappeared without a trace. Noah was sure that Hades' strength was definitely not inferior to his own. Even if it continued to climb, surpassing Noah would definitely not be an impossible thing. How long has it been since I showed this level of strength? Hades slowly took a step forward. Immediately, the strange black mist that lingered around his body undulated up and down like boiling water, bringing about a kind of gloomy and evil feeling that made one's heart palpitate. Just based on this, let me give you a little compliment, little brat. Listening to Hades' vicious words and feeling the rising aura on Hades' body, Noah's hand that was holding the sword also tightened little by little. It seemed that today was going to be a bit of a bitter battle. I'll ask you one last time. Hades, who was surrounded by dense black magic power, looked at Noah with a gloomy face. "Do you want to join my guild and explore the abyss of the path of demons with me?" Hearing this, Noah slowly took a breath and curled his lips into a smile. Daydream on. It was exactly the same answer as before. It was also this answer that made Hades completely give up. "Is that so?" Hades fiercely raised his head, the murderous aura in his ferocious eyes soared. Hades' voice seemed to come from the real abyss, drilling into Noah's ears. "Then die here." The moment his words fell, the magic power chain was like a python, cutting through the air and fiercely shooting towards Noah. Although this magic power chain was an extremely simple magic structure, in the hands of Hades, it was more effective than any ancient magic, lost magic, forbidden magic, or rare magic. Under the enhancement of Hades' terrifying magic power, the magic power chain became who knows how many times faster than before, turning into a thoroughly poisonous snake. Everywhere it passed, the air suddenly shook, causing the snake-like chain to bite towards Noah. Facing this unreserved attack of Hades, Noah did not dare to be careless. The hands, feet, knight's sword, and a death feather form magician suddenly slightly shook at the same time, accompanied by a burst of magic power spread out, like electric lines, climbed onto Noah's hands, feet, and weapons. Noah's enhanced magic was originally meant to strengthen the target of the spell. Hands could increase arm strength. Feet could increase leg strength. Knight's sword could increase its sharpness. Magician in the death feather form could increase its performance and power, directly increasing Noah's flying speed and dodging speed, in other words, increasing his mobility. Thus, under the full power of the enhanced magic, Noah's physical ability and weapon ability both rose by a level. Clang. Relying on the death feather form magician to push, Noah's figure rapidly retreated, that a knight's sword in his hand turned into a sword light, fiercely striking the oncoming chain. Clang. A clear sound like a bell rang. However, it was different from the last time. This time, in a direct collision with Hades' magic, not only was Noah unable to break the chain, but he also felt an abnormally strong impact from above, through the knight's sword, directly acting on his body, causing Noah to let out a muffled groan, his figure rapidly retreating. "I can freely dance magic, kid, take a good look at a realm you have never seen before." Hades' cold voice resounded across the sky. Immediately, the two magic chains shot out once again. Each of the magic chains was twice as dense as before, becoming extremely powerful. Facing Hades, whose attacks had suddenly become a lot crazier, Noah fell into a disadvantageous position for a moment. He could only rely on the mobility of the death feather to dodge and retreat while thrusting his sword at the chains that were chasing after him. Ding 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 ding. Suddenly, above the magic airship, in the sky, the gorgeous sword light and the snake-like magic chains intertwined and collided like lightning, bursting out a series of crisp sounds, causing dazzling sparks to fly in all directions. In such a situation, Noah felt that the force transmitted from the chains was becoming stronger and stronger, in addition to Hades' almost crazy attacks. Even if Noah used the enhanced magic to strengthen his arm strength, his arm had long been shaken to the point of numbness. Hades did not give Noah a moment to catch his breath. The hands holding the two magic chains waved again and again, causing the two magic chains to dance in an even more unpredictable manner, bringing about a burst of oppressive wind sounds, continuously attacking Noah violently. This can't go on. With such a thought flashing through his mind, Noah decisively mobilized the surging magic in his body to the extreme, causing his body to be covered in a bright white light. Instead of retreating, he took the initiative to move forward, exposing his chest, and welcomed the magic chains that were violently shooting towards him. Bang! The magic chains were like two heavy hammers, directly falling on Noah's chest, causing a muffled sound in unison. However, most of the muffled noises were the sound of the magical chains shattering as they were shrouded by the brilliant white light that shrouded Noah's body. As for the remaining small part, it was the sound of the magic chains' heavy force falling on Noah's body. Bearing this force, Noah felt as if he had been ruthlessly hit by two weightless and invisible cars, but he did not suffer any injuries. However, Noah borrowed this force, along with the death feather form of the magician, behind him, and instantly pulled away from Hades, leaving the magic airship, and flew downwards. Hades immediately jumped up, directly jumping down from the magic airship, and chased after Noah, landing directly on the ground. In the whistling sound of the wind, Noah seemed to be doing an extreme challenge. First, he swooped downwards at an extremely fast speed, and then when he was about to reach the ground, he fiercely turned, almost scraping the ground in a dangerous arc. His body spun, like a gust of wind, sweeping across the ground below, and once again suspended in midair. Duh! At the same time, Hades' body seemed to be completely weightless. Under the support of a burst of magic, he lightly landed on the ground, making a loud landing sound. "How is it, little brat? Little brat?" Hades leisurely crossed his arms and stared at Noah with a mocking look. "This is the first time you've seen this kind of magic, right?" Noah slightly narrowed his eyes, but in his heart, he had to admit that this Hades was indeed the strongest magic shooter he had ever seen in his life. That kind of control of magic at will, using magic as if it was dancing, did not seem like he was borrowing the power of magic at all. Instead, it was as if he had naturally turned magic into a part of his body, as if he was using his arms and body to control magic freely. Frankly speaking, Noah was able to reach a realm much stronger than the average 10 great magic shooters at such a young age entirely because he was born with unparalleled magic power and hard work. Magic, swordsmanship, close combat ability. Noah relied on his outstanding talent and hard work to far surpass others in these fields. But as the saying goes, there is always someone better than you, and there is always someone better than you, right? Just in terms of magic alone, Noah believed that there was no one in this world who could surpass Hades. Perhaps, only the legendary first-generation President Mavis and dark magic shooter Jerv could surpass Hades in the field of magic. At this moment, a burst of chaotic footsteps suddenly broke into the scene. Noah and Hades were startled at the same time, and raised their heads to look at the source of the sound. Then, their expressions changed at the same time. Under the leadership of Mira, Lysana, and Elusha, the magic shooters of Fairy Tale had actually gathered together at some point in time, and were majestically charging towards them. Chapter 440. Noah. Amidst the loud and orderly shouts, a group of Fairy Tale's arch-shooters, regardless of whether they were missing or not, were all present. Seeing Noah confronting Hades without any obvious injuries, Mira, Lysana, Elusha, and the others couldn't help but inwardly breathe a sigh of relief. Is this guy the enemy? The hot-tempered Naz couldn't help but clench his fists and stand up, glaring at Hades as he shouted loudly. You actually captured all of us, you bastard. See if I don't beat you up. Calm down. Naz. Seeing that Naz was about to rush out, Gray hugged him, his face full of shock as he looked at Hades, whose whole body was shrouded in a black mist-like magic power. His forehead began to drip with sweat. That's not a level we can deal with. Look carefully. After hearing Gray's words, all the Fairy Tale magic shooters who were originally furious about being captured finally discovered the evil and vast magic power coming from Hades' body. It was as if a basin of cold water had been poured over their hearts, causing them to turn cold. Laxus was among them. As for Noah, who was confronting Hades, he stared closely at Hades and spoke without turning his head back. He didn't expect Hades to be like this. Why are you here? Actually, Freed still had a puppet on him. After we brought Freed back to the guild leader led everyone on a mission. Elusha shielded Lucy, Lebby, and the others behind her. She also stared at Hades and spoke somewhat nervously. We found everyone who had lost consciousness on a nearby hill. After waking them up, we felt a powerful magic power appear here, so we all came together. You found everyone? Noah asked in surprise. But didn't you meet any enemies there? Because of Hades' interference, Noah didn't have time to take care of his captured Fairy Tale companions, but he didn't forget that Eurulia was also there. Logically speaking, Elusa and the others should have met Eurudia when they were looking for their companions in the guild. However, Lysana's answer was just as surprising. Enemies? We didn't see any enemies. No. Noah frowned. This Eurelia, every time after completing the task given to her, she does as she pleases. Hades also narrowed his eyes, then swept his gaze over all the members of Fairy Tale. Finally, his eyes fixed on an old man in the crowd. Long time no see, Makarov. Hearing Hades' words, everyone present was startled at first, then they subconsciously gathered their gazes on Makarov in the middle of the crowd. However, Makarov's performance surprised everyone. Guild leader, Mira said in surprise. What's wrong with you? Makarov did not answer Myra's question. Instead, he stared blankly at Hades. His aged eyes were filled with joy, astonishment, shock, bewilderment, disbelief, and other emotions. Do you still remember me? Little brat. Hades smiled coldly. It's been almost 50 years since we last met. You've aged. Hearing this, everyone understood. Makarov and Hades were old acquaintances. Moreover, judging from Makarov's behavior, their relationship seemed to be quite special. Why are you here? Makarov pointed at Hades with a trembling finger in disbelief. Why have you become like this? No one could understand why Makarov would say such a thing. Therefore, no one knew that although Makarov did know Hades, in his memory, Hades wasn't this sinister and evil person. Instead, he was a very amiable old man. Noah didn't know why Makarov was so shocked, but looking at Makarov, he didn't seem to see Hades as an enemy. Thus, Noah suddenly spoke. Grandpa, he's the president of Grimoire Heart, Hades. The president of Grimoire Heart? Elusha, Mira, Lisanna, Naz, Gray, and the rest all had a drastic change in expression. Grimoire Heart? The magic shooters from Fairy Tale who were present also made a ruckus. This is impossible. Makarov seemed to be unwilling to accept it, and stepped forward agitatedly. This can't be true, right? President Prihito. The moment these words were spoken, the entire place fell silent. President Prihito. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Prihito. Noah, who was facing off against Hades, looked at Hades with astonishment. You're Prihito. As long as one was a member of Fairy Tale, it was impossible for them not to know what the name Prihito meant. This was because in Fairy Tale, the name Prihito had almost the same deterrence as the first president, Mavis. He was one of the 4 founders of Fairy Tale, the man who took over Fairy Tale from the first president, Mavis, and inherited Fairy Tale's legacy. Yes. Prihito was the second-generation guild master of Fairy Tale. In other words, the president of the strongest dark guild in the magic world, Hades, was once a member of Fairy Tale, and was even the president. This. Lucy couldn't help but take 2 steps back, looking at the sinister Hades with a face full of shock. Liar. Mira also couldn't help but cover her mouth, unable to hide her shock. He's the second president? Elusha's resolute eyes wavered. This can't be true, right? Lisanna, Levi, Naz, Gray, and the others were all shocked, unable to react for a moment. TSK. Even Laxus seemed to have remembered who this person in front of him was, and was speechless. A troublesome person has appeared. Even the leaders of the Dark Guild were like this, not to mention the ordinary members, who were all stunned. Noah, who was floating in the air, looked down at Hades condescendingly, and sneered. I didn't think that our Fairy Tale's second-generation guild leader would actually become the guild leader of a dark guild. This really isn't a small joke. When people face facts that they can't accept, they will always escape. Because you were proud of me in the past, you can't accept this fact, just like how I can't accept the fact that I was once the president of Fairy Tale, Hades said to Noah in a cruel tone. After I passed the position of president to Makarov, my heart was only left with the pursuit of the path of magic. After saying this, Hades spread out his hands in front of everyone. After retiring from the Dark Guild, I embarked on a journey to pursue the path of magic. In the process, I discovered that magic is a miracle, the power to obtain hope in despair. Just like how light can only shine in the darkness, miracles are born from despair. In other words, the essence of magic is darkness. Hades's gaze swept across all the members of Fairy Tale, and his gaze became more and more vicious. After understanding this point, I discovered that in the light, the existence of Fairy Tale, which was changed by Makarov, is stupid. I really want to destroy it with my own hands. Do you want the blood and sweat of the first president to be completely destroyed? Makarov roared, and his body swelled up, becoming bigger and bigger. I won't let you do whatever you want, Prehito, no, Hades. You want to resist me with just you, little brat? Hades sneered, closed his fingers, and pointed at Makarov. Unfortunately, you can't win against me. After saying this, a strange black light flashed under Makarov's feet. Chapter 441. The surging evil mana rubbed against the air, causing it to become a little heavier. Before the gigantic Makarov could make a move, he felt a terrifying mana gathering under him that made his heart tremble. He looked down and saw a dark purple magic circle that was unknowingly under his feet, spinning on the ground. Feeling the terrifying mana gathering inside, Makarov's expression changed again, and he hurriedly roared at the surrounding people. Everyone! Get out of here! Under Makarov's roar, Ilusha was the first to react. Ilusha, who also felt the terrifying mana gathering under Makarov's feet, did not hesitate to shout at the surrounding magic shooters. Leave! Leave quickly! This shout finally made all the members of the guild react, and they all moved away from Makarov's position in shock and anger. But, in this way, what should Makarov do? Hiya! Amidst the earth-shattering roar, Makarov, who had become more than 10 meters tall, raised his huge fist against the whistling atmosphere, and slammed it on the rotating magic circle on the ground. Boom! Very straightforwardly, the ground shattered together with the magic circle that was gathering the terrifying mana, scattering in all directions together with the gravel. However, the fragments of the shattered magic circle suddenly trembled when they scattered in all directions, and actually expanded into smaller magic circles. As they spun, they seemed to form a more mysterious pattern, surrounding Makarov in the middle. Wang! In the next moment, the terrifying mana gathered in the magic circle erupted like a volcanic eruption, causing the magic circles to light up one by one. What? Makarov was shocked. Building a magic circle within a magic circle? Or was it formed in an instant? So many years have passed, kid, although you have a certain amount of growth, how can you, who is dedicated to the operation of Fairy Tale, compare to me, who has been deeply immersed in the essence of magic all these years? Hades laughed out loud. Makarov, let me give you a lesson, see how I dance with magic. As soon as he finished speaking, the magic circles that surrounded every corner of Makarov's body gathered together and suddenly soared. With the terrifying degree of that mana, perhaps, it would only take one hit for Makarov to lose the ability to fight, right? One of the top 10 magic shooters in the continent actually fell into such a dangerous situation in the blink of an eye. This made everyone in Fairy Tale turn pale with fright. Chairman Ilusha, Naz, Gray, and the others even tensed up their bodies, preparing to charge. Even Laxus's pupils shrank, clenching his fist, which was suffused with electric light, and his body began to crackle. At this moment, the magic circles that surrounded Makarov suddenly stopped, and were covered by an inexplicable white light. Pung! In the next instant, the white light seemed to have detonated the magic arrays one by one, causing them to explode and shatter. Hades' expression darkened, and he turned his head to look at the opposite side. After seeing my power, do you still intend to resist? That's right, I've witnessed your strength. Noah, who was holding a sword in one hand and extending his hand in the direction of Makarov with the other, raised his eyes and met Hades' eyes, his deep eyes bursting with light. So, it's time for me to show you my strength. Oh. Hades raised his eyebrows and smiled. Stop. Noah. Makarov, who had just escaped from danger, shouted at Noah. Hades is too strong. You can't act recklessly. However, Noah ignored Makarov's words and calmly spoke. Grandfather, all of you retreat, it's best to retreat a distance. After speaking, waves of violent magic rose from Noah's body, turning into the most dazzling white light, like a pillar of light, rushing into the sky. Otherwise, I don't know if I can guarantee your safety next. Feeling the storm of magic rising from Noah's body to the point where it could rival Hades, the people in a fairy tale were shocked. On the contrary, Hades smiled coldly at Noah, his body surging with black magic. Come, little brat. Hades suddenly stretched out his hand. A pitch-black magic formation immediately fluctuated in front of his palm. Like a cannon, his whole body trembled, causing a chain of magic to turn into a bolt of lightning, shooting straight at Noah. Noah's hand tightly grasped the knight's sword, his eyes did not waver in the slightest. He even closed his eyes and activated his sensing ability. Then, Noah's body lightly moved to the right, taking a step horizontally. Shio! The chain of magic that turned into a bolt of lightning pierced through the air, sticking close to Noah's shoulder and shooting behind him without slowing down. Wang! At this moment, on the knight's sword, in Noah's hand, a beautiful white light slowly lingered, covering the entire body of the knight's sword. Superior Destruction Magic Crush. After Crush was added to the knight's sword, Noah twisted his wrist. The knight's sword, in his hand, brought out a dazzling white light, fiercely chopping at the magic chain. Clang! Under the effect of a crush, the magic in the chain rapidly disintegrated and collapsed at an extremely frightening speed, causing the magic chain to become more and more illusory. This scene made Noah say, as expected, in his heart, but also secretly felt that it was troublesome. With Hades' magic, Noah's crush was no longer able to cleanly disintegrate his magic. Little did he know, Hades was slightly alarmed as he felt the magic on the chain continuously disintegrate. Soon after, he sneered and moved his hands, forming one hand seal after another, causing the space in front of him to pull out afterimages of magic. Wang! Amidst the vibrations in the air, the afterimages of magic that Hades pulled out combined to form several magic formations superimposed on each other. Their outer appearance was like a display of a celestial body. Inside, magic was crazily flowing. Amaterasu 28 Styles. With a light shout, Hades fiercely patted the celestial body like intricate geometric pattern in front of him. A burst of invisible attack suddenly shot out like a spear, surrounded by a dense and strange magic. It swept out like lightning and flashed in the air. At this moment, Noah's heart gave rise to a warning sign, causing his heart to slightly tighten. Without hesitation, Noah added crush to his body, causing his whole body to be covered in a dense white light. It even suddenly expanded, like a wave, with a dazzling light, expanding and expanding. Wang! Almost at the same time, the space around Noah distorted, and a violent burst of invisible attack mixed with a frightening magic suddenly exploded. Boom! An astonishing loud sound reverberated. They could only see that the space around Noah suddenly exploded without any warning, stirring up a majestic pitch-black flame, constantly stirring up the place where Noah originally stood. Seeing this scene, the faces of the people in the guild, who were already some distance away, changed abruptly. However, the sharp-eyed people had already discovered it. In the center of that huge explosion, a dazzling white light was rolling around like a tide, causing all the impact, explosion, magic, and pitch-black flame to be annihilated in an instant. Amazing! Hades praised from the bottom of his heart, while his palm fluctuated and rotated a magic array. But, it's not over yet. Accompanied by the violent sound of wind breaking, the magic chain suddenly swept out like lightning, heading straight for the center of the huge explosion in front of them. At the center of the huge explosion, Noah's body was covered in white light, and his figure turned into an afterimage. With a faint sound of wind breaking, he retreated out of the range of the huge explosion, quickly waving the knight's sword in his hand. Ding 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 ding. Like a violent storm, the magic chain was unceasingly thrown towards Noah, colliding with the knight's sword in Noah's hand, causing a continuous burst of crisp sounds and fierce sparks. Chapter 442. Ding, 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 ding. The magic chain was like a shadow following the body. It was like a venomous snake that stretched its body and bit at the prey in front of it. It fiercely collided with the pitch-black knight's sword, causing a continuous burst of crisp sounds and sparks. Noah had already superimposed the enhanced magic and the death feather form of the magician, pushing his speed to the limit. However, he was still only slightly faster than Hades' attack speed. Is this all you've got? Looking at Noah, who was entangled with his magic power chains and engaged in a high-speed battle, a cold glint flashed in Hades' eyes. It's really amazing to be able to reach this level at this age. The so-called genius is probably someone like you. However, you're still too young, brat. Hades spoke with assurance. However, just as he finished speaking, he suddenly saw Noah's body quietly tremble. Hades, who was keenly aware of this, was startled at first, but soon after, a chill surged in his heart. As an old man who was many years older than Makarov, Hades' many years of research on magic and his keen intuition at this moment drove his body, causing him to rapidly retreat like lightning. Just as Hades retreated less than a meter away, the space in front of him suddenly fluctuated. A figure quietly appeared like a ghost, and the knight's sword in his hand, which was shrouded in a brilliant white light, brought along a chill that made Hades' scalp numb and fiercely chopped down. Clang! The pitch-black knight's sword just brushed past Hades' face and fell to the ground less than 5 centimeters away from Hades' face. With the knight's sword's distance-controlling effect and the speed rune support, even Hades would have been severely injured by Noah's slash if he didn't rely on his outstanding intuition. Therefore, although Noah's sword didn't hit its target, the chill and the danger of taking a stroll around the gates of hell still made Hades feel a lingering fear in his heart. As his figure rapidly retreated, cold sweat couldn't help but appear on his forehead, and his back was soaked with sweat. If not for his quick reaction, Hades might have been arrogant a second ago, but in the next second, the situation would have been reversed and he would have been defeated by the brat Hades. That brat's chop speed is actually so frightening, and the ability to suddenly disappear and reappear again. Could it be that he's still hiding some magic related to space? When Hades thought about how he had just mocked Shurfong, only to have Shurfong retaliate, he could not help but feel enraged. Abruptly, he changed his hand's seals, and an unprecedentedly large magic array appeared before him. In the midst of the clanking sound of chains, magic chains shot out from the magic array. From afar, it looked like a huge spider web was emerging from the magic array, and Hades was in the center of the huge spider web, just like an evil spider. A steady flow of magic power gushed out from Hades' body, causing the magic chains to immediately linger with a strange black gas. Feeling the steady flow of magic power from Hades' body, Noah couldn't help but secretly curse. Could it be that this guy's magic power is inexhaustible? In the past, Noah had the privilege of squandering a large amount of magic power. Now, Noah finally saw the same privilege from others. He also understood how crazy his opponents were when they faced him in the past. In that instant, the chains intertwined together, turning into a black python that seemed to be alive. It had a strange metallic texture, but it gave off a terrifying and cold aura, like a malicious spirit from the abyss. This is the combination of chains and darkness magic. Feel the horror of the magic path from the abyss. In the midst of Hades' voice, the huge tail of the black python formed by chains and black fog fiercely swung. In the next second, it immediately cut through the space and swept towards Noah like lightning. In the air, Noah's eyes coldly looked at the huge black python rushing towards him with an ear-piercing sound. He took a light breath and suddenly clenched the knight's sword in his hand. Instead of retreating, he directly rushed towards the huge black python under the horrified gazes of his companions in the distance. Clang! A gorgeous sword light suddenly shot out from Noah's body and fiercely fell on the body of the black python. Clang! The sharp sword light stirred up the sound of steel colliding with steel, and also brought about violent sparks, splashing in all directions. However, this attack merely caused the black python's body to tremble. If you ignore the white light attached to the body of the black python through the sharp sword light, the white light that represented crush suddenly shook and dyed the black python's body into a pure white color. Bang bang bang. Immediately, under the effect of the white light, the huge black python seemed to have swallowed a bomb. Various parts of its body produced muffled sounds of explosion. Every time a muffled explosion sounded, a crack would appear on the body of the huge chain python. Don't get carried away. Brat. The veins on Hades's forehead bulged and his hand's seal changed again. The huge python suddenly opened its mouth and a viscous swamp-like darkness burst out from it and sprayed towards Noah's direction. The darkness rushed over, but Noah's charging figure did not stop because of this. A gorgeous white light directly rose from his body and covered Noah's entire body. Suddenly, as soon as the viscous swamp-like darkness touched Noah's body, it was as if it was incinerated by flames. Amidst a sizzling sound, it was completely shattered. At this moment, Noah rushed to the top of the black python's head. Ha! Noah directly let out a rare cold shout. He raised that a knight's sword in his hand and tightly gripped the hilt with both hands. He aimed at the black python, as if his body and the knight's sword in his hand had become one. His whole body turned into a sharp sword and fell from the sky like a meteor. Shio! Under the sharp sound of the explosion and the shocked gazes of his companions who were watching this scene from afar, Noah swooped down and landed heavily on the head of the giant python. Poochie! This was the sound of the sharp black knight's sword directly penetrating the head of the giant python. This was the sound of the resplendent white light rising from Noah's body through the black knight's sword and desperately flowing into the body of the giant python. Bang! This was the sound of the giant python's huge body slowly stiffening for a moment. Under the effect of the crush magic, the giant python turned into countless broken chains and burst open in a low explosion sound. Wah! Seeing his attack, which was a combination of chains and darkness magic, being cleanly crushed by Noah, Hades also opened his eyes wide in astonishment. Hades already felt that he thought highly of Noah. Even Makarov was unable to force Hades to use a combination of magic to counter the attack, but Noah was able to force him to use it. In addition, Noah's age was still much younger than himself, so Hades already showed that he thought highly of him. However, Hades still didn't think that he still couldn't defeat Noah. Therefore, Hades didn't notice. In the air, amidst the countless shards of the shattered chains, the sword-wielding figure suddenly disappeared. Hades only felt that his eyes were dazzled, and a figure strangely appeared. On the palm of the figure, a row of exquisite runes quietly rotated like a ring. This is my power. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah suddenly exerted force under the gaze of Hades's narrowed pupils. He clenched his fist and pinched the rune that was rotating like a ring into his hand. A burst of strong light rose from Noah's palm. An earth-shattering sound brought about a surge of violent waves of fire, rolling and expanding. The blazing temperature directly caused the surrounding air to become scorching hot, even giving rise to a dry feeling. Looking at the expanding waves of fire, the members of Fairy Tale in the distance all became sluggish due to excessive shock. Most of them didn't even have any reaction, and could only stare blankly at the sea of fire that blotted out the sky and earth, speechless. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.